Live from beautiful Los Angeles, California, this is One-on-One, New York's longest-running sports call-in show from the Los Angeles Convention Center as part of Radio Row. Nick DeLuca, Mike Messina, Mike Leegan, and Jack Roach. So happy that you could join us here from Super Bowl week here in the Convention Center. Guys, really excited to kick this week off with you here on One-on-One. So many great people that we're going to have an opportunity to speak to, and a lot of football to preview, among other things, and should be a really exciting week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thrilled to be here. I know for me personally, this is like a lifelong dream come true. As a kid, listening to whether it was Boomer and Carton, Mike Francesa on The Fan, Radio Row was always a big deal to me. So now to be out here, and not only are we surrounded by so many just great media personalities, just so many NFL legends. I mean, we already saw Joe Montana a few minutes ago just behind us. Ron Jaworski's walking around. We got some great guests who are NFL legends themselves coming up. It's just so great to be out here. And it's a great Super Bowl week, too. We got a great game coming up. So,
Jack, how you feeling?
I'm feeling great. You can just feel the energy in here, walking around, seeing everyone, speaking to one another. And listen, we're just getting started here, but I'm having a great time just physically in this space. We've got some great interviews coming up, and, you know, I wouldn't want to be with anyone else. We got a great crew here, so I'm excited for the rest of the day.
Hopefully throughout the week we get more interviews as they come on. We have 4 scheduled for right now, but it should be a great week ahead, talking all things football, Rams, Bengals, and anything else going on right now.
Mike mentioned the interviews lined up right now. Bob Golick, 3-time Pro Bowler. Doug Freeman, the co-founder of the Arena Football Association. Marcus McNeill, former Chargers Pro Bowl left tackle. Leigh Steinberg will join us later on this afternoon. NFL agent, guy who is amassed over $300 million for his clients, you know, signing Patrick Mahomes among others. So he's doing a really good job for those guys trying to negotiate the contracts. But really fascinated to get some good insight from a number of people just on this game in particular. You know, always great to be able to talk to guys about different experiences and what goes into it. But I'm really interested to get an opportunity to talk to a number of people who are going to provide some pretty interesting stuff on what to expect on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, look, we already mentioned one of our guests, Bob Golick, and, you know, this weekend we're looking at a great matchup here with that Rams pass rush versus this kind of porous Bengals offensive line. And, you know, Bob being a former Pro Bowl defensive lineman himself, I'd be interested to hear what he has to say, give us some insight into kind of the play with the matchup there. You know, because it's one thing for us as fans to sit here and kind of analyze the game and talk about matchups, but when you get a former player who was in those trenches, and I don't care how long ago it was, I don't care if it was 30 years ago, 5 years ago, a couple weeks ago, you get a former NFL, I don't care what the position is, to hear their insight into in a battle on the field. It's always going to be good stuff.
Mike Leegan does not care. He does not care when the person plays. He wants to get the insight.
We can get someone out here with leather helmets. I mean, I love it. I love NFL history. Part of the reason we're here, we've been joking all day.
Nice to be doing Oklahomas in between the radio rows here.
All week we've been joking about how, you know, we're out here, and I kind of pride myself on being like one of the people here who I can sit here and I can look around and I see an old guy with white hair, and I'm confident that I can figure out who that is. So, but no, it's going to be great to hear from these former players. It gets, like Nick said, some insight into the game because they just have an eye on things that we don't necessarily have.
Well, Mike, that reminds me of a conversation we had in the Uber earlier today.
Okay,
I said that as fans, and, you know, we get to speak behind the mics, but we're limited to a certain degree on what we can say.
You're skewing my opinion here, but go ahead.
But listen, the gist of it still persists because we don't know as much of these guys. We don't know as much about the game or our experience. It doesn't stack up to a guy that actually played in the game, actually knows the negotiations of contracts. You know, like, we just don't have that experience. And I apologize if I'm twisting your words.
Well, look, I wish we don't have instant replay on the Uber ride. I mean, the one difference is we're talking basketball. I think football is much more in the X's and O's. So I find that when it comes to insight into the game, an NFL player can provide a bit more than an NBA. But that's besides the point. And also, I think my general point is just because I am a fan, I don't feel like I can't have an opinion. I just think, regardless, the former players have a better opinion. But go ahead. Have
Mike
more
Messina,
insight.
you want to weigh in here?
No, I agree. I think former players have a better opinion about it because they're the ones who are playing the game. They play the game. They just have the best knowledge about what's going on. I want to ask you guys something, though. We see players from Barry Sanders. Nick, you mentioned you saw Josh Allen before.
Yeah.
Is there anyone that you've guys seen who you would love to have on, who you really want to talk to today?
Well, I mean, I haven't seen him physically in the flesh, but Nick and I were going to pick up our credentials, and there was a nice little tribute to the one and only Broadway Joe Namath. Now, I have no
God.
idea if Joe is here. I mean, maybe
I
he's
hope
probably
he's
not.
not.
But
I hope not.
let me tell you right now. I don't care who we're interviewing. With all due respect to our other guests or whatever we're doing on this show, if I see Broadway Joe walking around this place,
He
I am
shouldn't
putting.
even be a Hall of Famer.
Okay, we're not even getting into that. That's just absurd. I'm putting down this headset and I'm going to go talk to him. But that's who I like to interview. I don't even know if he's here, but we'll see what happens.
I hope not, because
Yeah, well-
that'd be something.
It'd be a good
No, he'd
interview.
be
I'll
good.
tell you
I mean,
that.
we'd have to have him on. I just, man, oh man, some of these Jets fans,
What are you
tough
going
to
do,
listen
Nick?
to.
What are you going to do?
No,
about
I
it?
know. I mean, I get it. I just, the guy completed like 40% of his
Okay,
passes.
well,
and won a Super
unlike
Bowl.
Jim Kelly, he has a Super Bowl ring.
Okay,
So, I
all
mean,
right,
that is the
that's
difference.
fine.
So,
Okay.
all right.
Look, I'm not.
I'm not,
Roll the
I don't
bus
want to
to
take
it.
shots at
It's
Jim
okay.
Kelly. I mean, he's a great quarterback, but you're taking shots at my guy Joe, who is not statistically a top 10 quarterback. He's not. He's in the Hall of Fame for mostly stuff he did off the field. But look, his numbers for his era are very good. But we're not here to debate
How do we
the
start
career of
talking about Joe Namath?
Namath.
This
I
is-
don't know.
This is not good.
But
Mike, I got to be honest.
Go ahead.
When you were giving your little spiel before saying you heard something in the hallway, I thought you were going to bring up Mike Francesa that you heard he might be coming. And
Oh,
then,
well, if
that's
well,
where I thought you were going
as
with
we're
that.
sitting right here, I got a clear view on the great Mad Dog Chris Russo. Now, obviously, you can't think about the Mad Dog without thinking about Francesa. Now, I don't think Mike is here. If Mike is the other person that if he was here, I would jump a table and go try to talk to him. That is a little different. And I don't care what anyone says. That would make a great interview.
So he just gets done talking about, trashing Jim Kelly, and he's already ready to jump through a table. Okay.
Yeah.
Would you be yourself in the Mike Francesa
Oh, would I do the
interview,
impression?
or would you do your Mike Francesa impressions?
I gotta give deference to number one. I mean, I can't be
We're
doing
gonna
the
have
impression
to
right
we're gonna
his
have to get
face.
that out of Mike at some point throughout this
Oh,
week.
we
to
have
really
3
get him
days of
into the
shows. We're
Mike
gonna be
Francesa impression.
We're gonna be delirious here at some point. It's gonna leak out eventually.
Hey, I mean, they say imitation's the greatest form of
It
flattery.
is.
Yeah.
It is. Look, I mean, Mike is. I don't know if I'd be as interested in doing this or want to be here if it wasn't for Mike. All jokes aside. So, but I want to know from you guys' standpoint right now. We mentioned, who do you want to talk to? Who do you want to see here? I mean, my thing is like we're looking at this game this weekend, Bengals Rams. What is one? And obviously, unfortunately, we're not going to be at the game. But what is one matchup you're really looking forward to in this game? I mean, I guess we can start with Nick. What do you think?
Yeah, I appreciate you getting us back on the rails here.
Yeah, I
'cause
know.
that
We
was
kinda got off
important, But I would say it really, to me, is going to come down to the Bengals' offensive line's ability to block some of the premier pass rushers that the Rams have. And that, to me, is going to be crucial for them to have success because, with the route that Cincinnati took, it's interesting. And it's not one that happens a ton with a team that doesn't have an excellent offensive line being able to withstand getting beat at the line of scrimmage. So I'm really curious to see how they're going to hold up. I don't think Tennessee and Kansas City provided the same type of challenge that Los Angeles is going to on Sunday. So that, to me, is the most fascinating matchup of this game that I'm looking forward to because that to me decides the game. Up front, I feel like Cincinnati's pass rush could make some hay in that area, but is Cincinnati's offensive line good enough to protect Joe Burrow, to give him the opportunity to get the ball to Jamar Chase, to protect Joe Mixon in the running game? That's what I think this game is going to come down to.
Well, you mentioned my pick because I am very excited to see Jamar Chase, and I'm assuming Jalen Ramsey is
Yeah.
going to be the guy guarding him because Jamar Chase, I mean, he's the most exciting rookie in the league, and soon I think he's going to be one of the most exciting receivers in the league, right? But Jalen Ramsey has this history of, I mean, he's vocal, and, playing for LA, being one of the best cornerbacks in the league. I mean, he's earned the right to do that. So, seeing these two guys, seeing a guy that's a little bit more proven versus this young rising star, I mean, two of the best players at their position in the game. I'm very excited to see that matchup, and not just the physical aspect of it, but potentially some trash talk in game. I think that could be a future highlight. Also, shout out to Jamar Chase for taking my question and putting me on the NFL.
You just wanted to go to Jamar Chase right there.
6.5 rated gritty.
to 7. To
Oh,
7.
to 7.
He said,
Excuse me.
He said
Excuse
pretty
me.
good.
Way too high too. That Mac Jones gritty wasn't that good.
But did you see
I agree.
pregame?
I agree with that.
Yeah, I don't. Think it was
Pregame,
a
did you
6.
see the Mahomes audio clip?
No, I didn't
where-
watch 5 seconds of the Pro Bowl. So.
Well, I mean, it was pretty funny.
Because that's something else that needs to get talked
Well,
about. what
we
the
have
Pro
plenty
Bowl
of time
is
to talk
these
about
days.
that. Yeah, I mean, in terms of the Pro Bowl, I mean, first of all, I want to get back to this Rams. I have a thought on the Pro Bowl in just a second, but in terms of the Rams matchup here, Rams-Bengals, Nick, you kind of stole everyone's thunder, I think, but it's the obvious matchup right there. Jack, I think you had a good point, too. My matchup, I mean, maybe it's not the biggest matchup. It's not really what people are talking about. But, look, we are a New York station. We have a New York focus. So how can you not be thinking about going into this game? Former New York Giant, Odell Beckham Jr. going up against former New York Giant, Eli Apple at corner. Now, look, they're not going to be lined up against each other all game. But it's inevitable. It's probably going to happen. And Eli Apple, I think he's gotten burned for most of his career, whether it's with the Saints, whether it's with the Bengals.
Especially the last couple games,
couple games, too.
Yeah.
And Odell, look, I was never the biggest OBJ guy. The simple fact of the matter is you got a lot of hate on him for things that happened with the Giants, things that happened with the Browns. He's been in L.A. now. He's performed at a top level. He's going to get a big contract this offseason. So I'm just going to be interested to see from a local kind of perspective, but even just a game's perspective, because I think it's a huge talent mismatch. Now, I don't know how much Eli Apple's going to be covering OBJ, but just something that I couldn't help but think about going into this game.
And how about how well Odell Beckham Jr. has transitioned to becoming a Los Angeles Ram, because he was kind of left for dead in Cleveland. There was a lot of question about, is this guy still a top-flight receiver that we saw at the front end in New York and tailed off with Eli Manning toward the end of his career? Certainly didn't work out with Baker Mayfield in Cleveland, and he has really just re-energized his career under Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford throwing him the football. He is somebody who is a major X factor, as Mike pointed out, and whether it's on Eli Apple or whomever else is going to try and cover him from a Cincinnati secondary, he's a guy that they're going to have to pay attention to and has been a major weapon for Sean McVay in that offense.
I totally agree. And, I mean, I think what also is great about Odell, I mean, I think one of the biggest knocks about him was, whether it was in Cleveland or in New York, there was always this perception, warranted or not, especially think about that infamous Panthers game where he's on the sidelines going crazy. It was always, people thought that Odell was a me guy, not a team guy. Very much about himself. He wanted the ball. He wanted the targets. Obviously, there was the stuff with his father and Baker Mayfield, and that just kind of lent more credence to that theory. But he's come down to L.A., and I don't want to say he's, a number 2 wide receiver, because he's not. He still has the talent of a number 1. But, look, Cooper Kupp was the guy there already. I mean, they had Robert Woods, who, of course, is out for the season with injury. But, I have to commend Odell, because I don't know if he's necessarily settled into a true number 2 role. But that being said, I think there haven't been any issues, and to me, he seems to be more than content, because Cooper Kupp's going to get his fair share of targets. And I got to give props to Odell to be able to, play within the system and not be that guy who's demanding the ball all the time and is, just willing to do whatever it takes to help the team win.
I think that's when Odell struggles the most, is when he needs to be that number 1 guy and he expects to get the ball every deep pass, every short pass. And now with Cooper Kupp, that obviously takes that away from him, takes pressure off of him. And look, with the Rams, 5 touchdowns, 0 touchdowns with the Browns all season long. So you can kind of just tell that him being that number 1 option in Cleveland alongside Jarvis Landry didn't really help him out. He moves to L.A., and now Cooper Kupp is the clear best wide receiver in the league, and Odell's there right behind him, and he can get those targets when needed.
I would say that's debatable.
I don't know about
number
the
one.
true number 1 wide receiver 1 in the league.
I mean,
That's
Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams. I mean, I'm not saying
those are 2 guys that come to mind.
I'm not
Mike
saying-
Evans has
I
been
think
really
Cooper
good
Kupp's
in
a step
Tampa
above
Bay.
Stephon Diggs by far.
I would say by far.
I don't
Triple
know
crown
about
winner,
that.
I mean.
I don't know. I'm not even a Stephon Diggs fan. I don't know if I can just say that. I mean, I think Cooper Kupp is really, really good.
Tyreek Hill should be in that conversation
Tyreek Hill is
too.
very good.
DeAndre Hopkins, when healthy, yeah.
Yeah, he's had off here this year. I don't know. I mean, I think another matchup also to think about in this game is, we got Eric Weddle back there for the Rams. This guy just came out of retirement. He's an older guy, and not that he can't play. Obviously, look, he had who forgets? He had that big hit on Mike Evans in the divisional round. Seemed like it could have been a potential penalty there. It was obviously that whole mess. But the point is, he can still hit hard. He can still play. He can still run around. My question is, this guy was on his couch a few weeks ago, and now he's going up against a Bengals offense that relies heavily on the tight end. He's going to be asked to cover some guys. You already mentioned the idea that Jalen Ramsey's going to have his hands full with Jamar Chase. If you're Zach Taylor, you're orchestrating this offense, are you going to be trying to, the Rams as a defensive unit, they're probably going to be focused on shutting down T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. You got to rely on your tight ends in this game, because I think there's a mismatch there potentially.
Yeah, I'm with you there 100%. How about the last time that a team that we perceived was rebuilding comes in and wins a Super Bowl? That's what's so fascinating to me about the Cincinnati Bengals, because you feel like the Rams coming into this season and then throughout, they trade a 2nd and a 3rd round pick to acquire Von Miller. They sign Odell Beckham Jr. They trade away a couple of 1st round picks to bring in Matthew Stafford after not having a ton of success with Jared Goff. They're pushing their chips to the middle of the table. Cincinnati was like, hey, we want to try and rebuild this thing. Joe Burrow's coming off an ACL injury. We feel like we've got some good offensive weapons. We know we're going to have to rebuild our offensive line and try and see what we can find there. Defensively up front, okay, we'll probably want to rebuild the secondary. And this is a team that expectations, even throughout the postseason, didn't feel like, okay, maybe they'll win a game. Okay, they won the home game. Wow, they shocked Tennessee. But then no chance against Kansas City, and then all of a sudden they're sitting here in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, look, I would say this. Something that's really stood out to me about the Bengals, I remember, and forgive me, I don't remember the exact week. You know, the Bengals played the Packers earlier in the season, and they ended up losing the game in overtime. Was it overtime or the fourth quarter? It was a late defeat. The bottom line was but they were going toe-to-toe with the Packers. This is before they come out top, like they were towards the top of the AFC North. I don't think anyone was buying them as a contender even for the playoffs at this point. But I remember I tweeted out, and obviously as a Jet fan, I'm always thinking Jet focus, but, you know, to me, I thought the Bengals were on a good path. You had the rebuilding team, Joe Burrow coming off the ACL injury, and this is what you wanted to see in terms of progress. At that time, earlier in the season, I don't even think we were thinking Bengals playoffs, let alone a Bengals Super Bowl appearance. And, you know, to see them, you know, the progress they've made is immaculate. So big props to them.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible the way that they've turned this thing around. Zach Taylor has been very complimentary of the Bengals organization for allowing him the leeway after a couple of lean years in his first away from Sean McVay and being able to turn this thing around. And it was, you know, really interesting. And never know who's going to stop by. Mike Leegan's going to have to pinch himself a little bit
thrilled.
Here.
Well, first of all, we have Nick Mangold, former New York Jets center, joining us. Now, Nick, I'm Michael Leegan. This is Nick DeLuca. We are WFUV 90.7 in New York. And anyone who knows me knows I am a diehard New York Jet fan. I bleed green and white. Some of my earliest childhood memories are watching you play, whether it's with Chad Pennington, Brett Favre, you know, Mark Sanchez, whatever. Doesn't matter. I am a huge fan, so I'm thrilled to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm trying to think where I want to start. I mean, I guess this is where I'd like to start right now. So I think we just came up on it was 10. You know, obviously with the Jets now, it's 10 plus years since they've last made the playoffs. We're still in a rebuilding mode right now. Obviously, Robert Saleh, and I know you're still involved in the organization. You do your cooking program, and you have the podcast with Mark Sanchez and all that. You know, I'm just kind of curious, as you look at this team right now, we look at the season that just happened with the Jets, are you encouraged by the progress? Are you encouraged by the coaching staff with Robert Saleh? Have you been encouraged by Zach Wilson? What was your takeaway from this past season for the Jets?
Yeah, you know, I'm encouraged just seeing the way that this team kind of came together, where it's not guys are young. That's one of the biggest problems that they had, and technical difficulties?
Sorry, Nick. Yeah, I don't know what's going on right here with the mics. We got some kind of.
We got to make sure that we're on.
1 second. Sorry about this. All right. Yeah, just take my cousin. Sorry about that, Nick. Appreciate it.
There we go. We got him.
All right, that should be good. We good now?
Yeah, we should be.
Okay.
There we go.
There we go. All right, thank you so much, Nick. All right, appreciate you rolling with us. Thank you very much. All right, so as I was saying, progress with the Jets. What do you think?
Yeah, and first you got to look. They're a very young team. I think they had the most starts by a rookie by like 100 with the amount of young guys that have played. So that's going to factor into it. And I think when you look at Zach Wilson, you look at a guy who everyone said he was a little inaccurate for the season, which I would say I would concur. But I think it was more so, you know, trying to do the right thing every time. And so that playbook. I mean, he only had 2.5 months with the playbook before the season starts, and it's not going to be the full playbook. You can't put the full thing in that short amount of time. So this offseason is going to be huge for him, of where he's able to study. And everything I've heard about him is that he's a football junkie. So he loves watching film. He loves studying, doing those things. So this offseason is going to be huge. Where right now he doesn't have to worry about practice. He doesn't have to worry about getting in there and making sure he's going to meetings and everything. So he can take this time and really sit down and dissect this playbook and know it inside out. So when they do get him back for OTAs and everything, he's hitting the ground running.
Up and down rookie year for Zach Wilson, but he's in an AFC that has a ton of really young and good quarterbacks. Josh Allen in his own division, Patrick Mahomes is there, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, who's in the Super Bowl this year. To me, it feels like it's less about him going through the traditional growth and more about needing to ascend to a really spectacular level for the Jets to ultimately get to where they want to go as a contender in the AFC. Do you feel like he's a guy who can get there?
I feel like he is, and I think that's the hard part of what he's dealing with, because now he has all these comparisons to all these other young kids. The fact that Joe Burrow has gone to the Super Bowl in his second year, like, well, why can't everyone do that?
Yeah.
And we're like, well, and he did it with the Bengals. Like, if you can't do it, like, well, Joe Burrow did it. So I think that's going to be something that he's going to have to, really try to put aside and not think about too much, and just trying to focus on improving himself and try to stay out of the comparing to the other just great quarterbacks that are crazy young, that we have this big swell of guys coming in.
So, Nick, I mean, I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about some of the older glory days, if you will, with the Jets, especially when you were there. I mean, when you look at the last 20 years, I mean, I think, frankly, your time with the Jets was probably the highlight for the franchise in that 20-year time span. So, for me, I kind of want to know. I mean, two of my favorite teams of all time are those two teams that went to the AFC Championship game back-to-back in 09 and 10. Obviously, when we think about those teams, we think about you, we think about Mark, we think about Revis, Cromartie. Who is a guy who was part of those playoff teams that doesn't get enough appreciation from the Jet fan, from the NFL fan, who's kind of slept on? It was a big contributor.
I think the biggest one would be Dave Harris. He was a fantastic linebacker for us, played at a high level for very long, and really saw no recognition for it. It's crazy. Like, he was, the bedrock of that defense, and everyone's like, oh, did he even play for us? Like, it's crazy.
Curious for you, in previewing this Super Bowl matchup, the Rams have one of the best to ever do it up front on the defensive line, and Aaron Donald. You as a former center, how would you like trying to go about blocking that guy?
It would be very difficult. But yeah, I think this is where, teams, this is the big storyline of the week so far. So it's going to get dissected, 8 ways Sunday. But I think the big thing, is when you go to it and you say, well, you have to double Aaron Donald. It leaves 3 individual blocks across the line, and that's not going to work for a whole game. So, people are always like, well, how do you change it up? How do you switch to handle this? And I think the biggest thing that the Bengals are going to have to do is stick with what they do. If they try to change it up too much, I think it's going to end up bad. And so if they stick with what they did, it got them to a Super Bowl. It has to work somewhat. Everyone's all caught up with the Tennessee game. And like, oh, they gave up 9 sacks. There's no way, they're going to get past the Rams. I think that was kind of a kick in the butt for the Bengals. And, obviously they came back, did well against the Chiefs. So it's going to be a fun Super Bowl. I think that's the biggest thing that's going to be taken out of it, is I think this is going to be one of those light it up, really get after it Super Bowls.
Nick, you had plenty of exposure to Tom Brady, finally on his way out, retiring. Was there a moment against him in your playing career that kind of stands out, or just a matchup between the Patriots and your career that really you remember?
Obviously the Super Bowl win, or not the Super Bowl win, the playoff win. We're at the Super Bowl. The playoff win after being counted out, and we took that beating in Thanksgiving, to come back and win there was a fantastic feeling.
Nick, I'm just curious also, I mentioned off the top when you sat down with some of the quarterbacks that you played with the Jets, Chad, Brett Favre, obviously you and Mark had a great connection, still do, and Ryan Fitzpatrick, of course, also with that great 2015 season. I'm just curious, in your career, you were consistent, but you always had this change of quarterback, and obviously Geno as well, all that kind of stuff. How tough was it for you, every few years or so, every other year, to have to change quarterbacks like that? How did that affect your play? And then on a side note, which quarterback did you really enjoy playing with the most?
I don't think it really affected me as much as maybe like receivers and everything. Yeah. Because I always joke I can snap the ball to anybody. Yeah. So it was a little difficult because you see good teams and you see them have the same quarterback for 15 years. Like, well, I got a new one. 2 years later, like we're just doing this rotation thing. So that kind of stunk. And I don't know if I have a favorite per se. Like, it was really cool playing with Brett Favre. Yeah. I grew up watching him, so to be able to play with him was really awesome. Chad was such a great influence when I first got in the league. Mark was just a wild child, and so I had a lot of fun with him, and we have still a great friendship. And Fitz was fantastic. Like, he came in. It was the first time I had a quarterback that was my age that would get my references. So I thought that was pretty cool. So I had good experiences with all of them. So I can't say one's a favorite, but I mean, I do a podcast with Mark, so kind of assume he might have to be the de facto favorite.
Well, Nick Mangold got to keep himself out of trouble. We'll get you out of here on this one. Really appreciate you taking some time with us here. Just curious for you, you mentioned all those switch-ups and how it affects receivers and the offensive continuity. In your estimation, how impressive is it for a team, for both of these teams, really, for the Rams to have Matthew Stafford come in year one and have all of these new pieces surrounding him, entirely new offense after spending so much time in Detroit, Joe Burrow coming in off of injury, a new number one wide receiver, all that different combinations up front, in the offensive line. How impressive, in your estimation, is it for these two teams to be here?
I think it's very impressive. You look at the way that the Rams got here, and we can say that they bought their way to the Super Bowl, just grabbing anybody and everybody that can help them. And the Bengals seem to be doing it, with the draft and trying to build up from the ground. So it's neat to see those two things happen. It's going to be a huge disappointment for the Rams if they don't get the victory because they put all in for this year. So where the Bengals, I think they can now have sustained success. They can rebuild the offensive line. Get help on the defense. So I'm excited for, I think, Cincinnati more so than I am the Rams.
Nick, appreciate the time.
Nick, I would be remiss before we let you go. You got some barbecue sauce, if I'm not mistaken, right here. Can we get a little plug for that? What's going on over here?
Yeah, it's Mangold 7-4 barbecue sauce. It's my own sauce. I've been making it in my kitchen for about 8 years now. You can find it locally on Long Island, and you go to mangold74bbq.com. You can find out where we are everywhere, but you can also get it online, maxwarehouse.com. They have a great subscription service, so you can get it in regular intervals. And it's been a lot of fun, and it's a neat project for post-playing career.
Well, Nick, I said it off the top. It's just an absolute thrill and a pleasure to speak to you as a lifelong Jet fan. So thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
No problem.
Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you.
Have a good
Thank
one.
you.
Almost missed the barbecue sauce there.
Hey, you got to get the barbecue
Jumped the
sauce
gun.
in there.
Gotta
Come
get
on.
a barbecue sauce.
You guys only
That's
got
awesome.
larges. We don't really have a lot of larges for the big men. But
Appreciate
you guys figure
it.
out. We got one large and a few XLs.
Former
Thank you very much.
We really
it.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Nick.
Anyway, I gave him my card. If
Yep.
I can get this
Former
flip in any
Jets.
way, that'd be
Yeah,
Senator
I
Nick
can send you
Mangold
that.
joining us
Pictures,
here
I got it all.
that'd be awesome.
on WFUV Sports. Mike,
I
I
am
imagine that was
thrilled.
pretty cool for you.
That
there,
was
yeah?
pretty great for me again. I mean, as a lifelong Jet fan, especially with so bad in my more adult years, to have a guy who, as a kid, you just love to watch play. And I mentioned to Nick those two teams that went to the AFC Championship game. Those teams meant so much to me. To meet Nick and to have that kind of guy come to speak with us. And we got some T-shirts here too, which I will be wearing. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thrilled.
So there you go.
So, I mean, as we're sitting here, I hope you bear with us, folks, as we're kind of sorting out some chaos over here with guests. I mean, this is the great thing about Radio Row. There's just guests
You never know
everywhere.
who's gonna pop in.
You never know
That's
who's going to
the whole
pop in.
thing.
We didn't see this happening, and we have another guest joining us right now.
How we doing, guys?
Doug Freeman, how's it
Great to
going?
meet you. Jack
Arena
Rush.
Football Association, thank you
Yes,
very
sir.
much for joining us.
And actually a New Yorker.
Yes, sir.
How are we doing today?
We're good.
Very good.
How are you doing?
Hey, man. Kid in the candy store. Shouldn't let a fat guy in.
Doug
Don't do
Freeman, the co-founder of the Arena Football Association.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you're a kid in a candy store.
Yes.
You're having some fun this week. How much fun is it for you to be out here?
It's extraordinary. This is my first Super Bowl week.
It's ours too. So
And it's a great lead up. I mean,
Yeah.
we've heard about all the great things that happen. I had an opportunity to be at a conference, and I was one of the keynote speakers, and Chris Carter, Hall of Famer, was interviewing me. Now, I don't know how that happened, but it happened, and it was an amazing experience. Bobby Wagner was another person who participated, and all of these greats of the NFL. Ray Lewis was there, so that was the beginning of my week. And then I actually have to admit something. I did have a New Yorker in LA moment. So a New Yorker, when you go to places, you hear, oh, stars are hanging out. What's a skeptical New Yorker? Some C-grade reality actor. So we went to the spot in Santa Monica after a conference reception, and we walk in like, any tight establishment, and there to the right, I said, there's a guy named Toby, and he's across from a guy named Leonardo. And I go, oh. Maybe I should shut my mouth up. So
Tobey Maguire and Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yes.
So
that
that's
was my first night here.
There you go.
Spider-Man and the biggest movie star that's ever lived. Okay, that's
That
pretty
was my
crazy.
Good
kickoff.
start.
That's a good start to Super Bowl week.
So, Doug,
Yes.
in reading about the Arena Football
Yes.
Association, I think one thing that you guys really emphasize is how much you're committed to diversity and really
Yes.
being an inclusive league.
Yes.
And obviously, one of the big storylines this week and throughout the NFL, throughout sports, is the Brian Flores
Yes.
lawsuit. And I think we can all agree it's something that's necessary for change.
Sure.
And we all hope that it brings the change that we need, as so
Yes.
much as a league, as a society.
Right.
So I was just wondering if you had some thoughts on the lawsuit, or you had any thoughts about what's going on with the league right now in that respect.
So look, we're all at a time where there have been a lot of changes. I call it, with the pandemic, we were in a crisis. Right? We had the pandemic, we had tough economic times, we had the George Floyd situation, and that led to a lot of reflection for the country. But organizations can only change as fast as they can. And I know I'm not an apologist by any stretch for the NFL. There is a long road of change that needs to happen, but it's not going to happen overnight. So I think expectations is something to consider. The other piece is you don't have to make change just at the NFL, and that's one of the reasons the AFA was built. We felt that there was an opportunity for different type of people. Young folks. We potentially think we'll have one of the youngest owners in pro football in the next year or two. And I'm talking a 20-something owner of a team, which will be extraordinary, right? It's veterans. It's persons with disabilities who didn't dream but thought, it's impossible. Well, we're trying to make the impossible possible. So that's our diversity, equity, inclusion is really inclusion for all, giving dreams reality. And what we found in these mid-sized markets, hey, look, we can have teams in 100 places, not 30. So we believe we want to be what they call a Big Six sports league. We want to be right there with MLS in the next 2 years, recognized as one of the Big Six leagues. But we also want to know that there will be different types of people from different backgrounds that'll be running these things. And it's going to make a difference. Some of the things will be a little more innovative. But that's a long way of saying you don't have to just change at the NFL. We want to change the sports industry.
Yeah.
Talking with Doug Freeman, co-founder of the Arena Football Association. Doug, for our audience, people who might be interested in coming out to a game, what would you expect that experience to be like?
Now, currently, our teams are in southern United States, 5 teams in Texas. We have just announced 2 more teams, one in Jackson, Mississippi, one in Wichita, Kansas. We hope to announce something big for New York City, so maybe you'll be the folks that we announce it with.
There you go.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Yeah.
We'll hold you to that.
It will be the next couple months, but we're going to have something big in New York City to launch our next year. And we also hope by 2024 to have New York and Northeastern area teams. Currently, fans can look on Flow Sports. So Flow Sports is one of the hardcore subscription services, about 10 million subscribers. All of our games can be seen there. Going into 2023, we have our media rights up. So you'll likely see us on, more attainable, whether it's an ESPN, at Fox Sports, CBS. You'll see us much more prevalent in 2023 season.
Doug, I just had a question. I think we've seen recently, whether it's the AAF, the XFL, the bringing back of the USFL, there is a desire, I think, for more football. I think, as an NFL fan myself, it seems that now we have 17 games, but it's 17-game season. If your team makes the playoffs, great, and then it's over. We're already at the Super Bowl, and it feels like the season just started, and now we're done again. Could you speak to kind of the desire, the hunger from the average American sports consumer to have more football, a desire for spring football, and what you're going to bring that separates you from the NFL and at the same time keeps it familiar enough so that people are still interested?
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, from research, about 35-40% of football fans are fanatics, which basically means they want year-round football. So the demand is there. That's 40, 50 million people with that hunger. The challenge that has occurred, as we know, the AAF and the XFL, it's the game off the field. So our motto is the business model wins the games, because we can't ask fans to support us and we can't even get through a full season. So one of the things that we're proud to say as a league is we're an expansion league. We completed our first year in the heart of a pandemic with 5 teams in Texas last June and July, and we did it successfully. Now we're in expansion mode, and that builds trust with fans. That means that the teams will be around. We don't want to talk about the USFL or someone else, and a year later they're not there.
Yeah.
That breaks that fan trust. So for us, so you know, we are lucky we come from large corporations, consulting firms. We're New York corporate guys. We know business cold. So the first thing we had to get right is the business model, and we've aced that test. The second thing you got to get right is scale, right? We can't just be in 7 towns in Texas. Nobody will take us seriously. So our goal by 2030 is to be in 100 major cities, major and mid-sized cities. And it's a very similar model to something called the NCAA football model. There are 120 teams in 10 conferences. We'll have 110 or 100 or so in 8. So now you've got the scale that a fan is looking for. You can go to your local town. And then the next piece is we're going to be global. So we'll have an additional 400 teams globally by 2050. And that's a trust model. People go, even if they're crazy, at least they're going to try to make it attainable to all fans.
Yep.
Talking with Doug Freeman, the co-founder of the Arena Football Association. We appreciate you taking some time. Want to wrap up on this one. You mentioned how much of a great experience that it was for you to be out here on Radio Row. Who you got on Sunday?
Yes. So who do I got
Who
Sunday?
you got on
Oh,
Sunday?
you think? No, I've said this a couple times. There are 2 paths that I see. Path 1 is, I think, the more unexpected, a blowout game. And I see the Rams putting up a lot of numbers, score in the range of 42-20, 42-21. That's one route. The other route, it's just tight. Those big defenses really take over. The horses can't get through the gates, and you're talking a tight game, 20-17 for the Rams. The Rams in either case, but I think those are based on what I see in the configuration of the teams, those look to me the 2 kind of outcomes you're going to get.
Doug, appreciate your time.
This is an honor. We look forward to another big announcement with you.
Absolutely.
yes.
All right.
Honor for
That's
us. Thank you
awesome,
very
guys.
much.
That would be awesome. Doug Freeman, the
Thanks so
co-founder of the Arena Football Association. Appreciate him coming on and talking some arena football. Super Bowl here on One as we roll on here from Radio Row in Los Angeles in the Convention Center. Marcus McNeill, the former Chargers Pro Bowl left tackle, is going to be up next for us, and already a great perspective from a couple of guests.
I am thrilled with how we've gotten the show started. We had a bit of a conversation amongst the 4 of us, and then to get, we started off our morning, just to give you a little behind the curtain here. We started off our morning thinking we're going to get certain guests, and then boom, to get Nick Mangold at the bat, and then we had a great interview with Doug, and now we are welcoming in Marcus McNeill, the former left tackle for the San Diego Chargers. Marcus, how is it going?
It's going great, man. It's going great. I can't complain. I can't complain at all. How's it going with you guys?
It's going great. We're thrilled to be here at the Super Bowl, as I'm sure you are too. And you know what? One of the first things that I want to ask you is this. Look, you played your whole career with the San Diego Chargers, and obviously within the last few years, the team is now relocated right here to L.A. And obviously playing with the Chargers like you did, you got to know the fans there in San Diego, passionate fan base. What do you think about the fact that the Chargers, relocated here to L.A.? Would you wish that they had stayed in San Diego? And how do you feel for those Charger fans still in San Diego that couldn't, kind of lost their team?
Yes, because I'm a part of those Charger fans that lost their team down there. It was tough, it was tough whenever they left. I think that, they left a big hole in the city that you really just can't really fix. There's no mending it. But at the same time, I didn't go anywhere else. I didn't play for anybody else. So regardless of if the Chargers go to London, I'm gonna be a Bolt fan. I'm gonna be part of the Bolt gang, and I'm always gonna be there. So even though I wish they were a little bit closer to home, I'm still rocking with them.
All right, cool.
Well, hopefully not off to London anytime soon.
Yeah.
That would be preferable.
Yeah.
Curious for you as a former left tackle, what it would be like preparing for a matchup like this, with Von Miller on the edge or Trey Hendrickson, those types of guys who are really coming after quarterbacks as you preview this one. What's the mentality for you when you know that you're facing a big-time customer on the other side of the line of scrimmage?
To be honest, that actually got my blood flowing. If you wanted to see me have a bad game, put me against somebody I didn't know. right? Like, and I'm like, who is this guy? He came from where? Oh, okay, all right. You know what I'm saying? I might be sleepwalking through half of the game compared to, like, if I got Von Miller coming off the edge, like, I know when I wake up that morning, like, all right, I got to block somebody. So it's just a totally different mindset. But I think the ones who, like, thrive are the ones who actually take advantage of, like, those situations, like, where they actually thrive on moments where it's like, oh, this is a big game. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's time for me to put on a show. Like, that's the mindset you have to have. Like, if you're coming to the show, like, in the big dance, like, this is the time for you to show up. It's not time to, like, get all tight, you know what I'm saying, and anxious about something. Like, it's the time to let it go and let it fly, you know what I'm saying, and let the chips fall where they may.
Sticking with the matchup on Sunday, you've got a guy, Jamar Chase, who just had such an impact in his rookie season. You were a starter for your entire rookie season, came off, made an immediate impact. Do you have a different approach as a rookie going into this game where other guys have been there before, played longer, more experience, or is it just game starts and go?
It's game starts and go. I think that's probably the best thing that they have going for themselves is the fact that Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase actually come from a big-time school. In the SEC, they played in front of hundreds of thousands. They played on national championship games. And so I don't think the arena is going to be that big of a deal for them to, like, to get comfortable with because they're used to being in atmospheres like that. But them being young and hungry and not scared and knowing that they belong on the field, that's what got me to my first Pro Bowl. You know what I'm saying? Like, my rookie year, because, like, when I stepped on the field, I had guys like Sean Merriman that I lined up against every day at practice. I used to drool in my mouth like, oh, I'm about to go get him today. You know what I'm saying? But you transition that to the football game, and now it's like 10 times easier because I'm blocking one of the best, defensive rushers in the game. So, like, kudos to Jamar Chase. And the funny story is I actually talked to Jamar Chase whenever he actually – I talked to Jamar Chase whenever he got drafted. He's actually a cousin of one of my best friends I grew up with. They were all at draft day, so he put him on the phone. I talked to him. I'm not taking any credit for Jamar Chase's season. Let me start there. I'm not taking any credit for his season, but I got a chance to talk to him, and even when you talk to him, you just heard how calm he was and, like, just ready for the moment, you know what I'm saying? So I just told him to go get it, you know what I'm saying? So to see him actually thrive this year, I was probably his biggest fan, literally his biggest fan.
I'm talking with Marcus McNeill, former Chargers Pro Bowl left tackle. I got to hit on this first before I get to my next question. When Merriman went up against you in practice, if he beat you, would he do a sack dance?
No, he didn't beat me in practice.
Okay, I didn't want to assume it. I just wanted to ask.
No. I used to joke sometimes. He was a great player. We had great battles in practice and stuff like that. But, like, we used to get after it, And I used to talk. Like, even when I was young, I would come out there and, like, couldn't nobody block him. We got all these sacks, so I get them in practice. I'm with him. You know what I'm saying? So I used to tell the coach, the defensive coordinator, hey, I'm gonna write a book, and it's gonna be a bestseller amongst the AFC. How to block Sean Merriman. I'm gonna write the book, and everybody gonna want it because don't nobody know how to block him but me. So we used to have fun at practice, man. We used to just have a good time.
Well, I'm glad you won your share of battles and certainly being the player that you were and the caliber of player that you were. I'm sure that you won a fair share of them. I know you're still a member of Chargers Nation here. You're paying attention to the team. They got a pretty darn good quarterback in Justin Herbert. How impressed were you with his season?
Very impressed. I saw Justin first. They came to Auburn. That's a school I went to in college, and I got a chance to see them play in Auburn. And he came down there then, and man, he just has those types of arm where he can get the ball anywhere on the field. And nobody really realizes, like, how rare that is, you know what I'm saying, to be able to throw the ball cross field, which is pretty much 50 yards if you from one sideline to another, like on a rope, So for me to see him have the abilities in his arm, the only thing that I was wishing for was, like, that he had a line that he can trust in. So when they went and picked up Rashawn Slater from Northwestern, I'm talking about he was a godsend, you know what I'm saying, because he put them immediately into a playoff contending team, So now, whereas we were still trying to address the offensive line, we have an offensive line that's getting better, and we have a quarterback that is like a franchise quarterback. The older era, the Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers, Tom Brady says he's retired. I put the air quotes up, but now you got the Justin Burrows, Joe Burrows, and then you have Justin Herbert. You know what I'm saying? You have Lamar Jackson. Like, you just have this new era of quarterbacks coming up that's just exciting for the NFL.
You know, Marcus, you mentioned Phillip Rivers briefly right there. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Phillip. Just retired, obviously, a year ago. You play with him. There's going to be a lot of debate over these next few years. Is he a Hall of Famer? Does he deserve to get in? He, of course, never got to that Super Bowl. But there's obviously debate. Was he the most talented of those quarterbacks with Roethlisberger and Eli? What was it like playing with Phillip? And, you know, what do you think about the potential Hall of Fame candidacy for him?
I think it should be a no-brainer Hall of Fame career. You know, if you pay attention to his stats and stuff, the numbers don't lie. You know, he's always a top 5 quarterback throughout the league, you know, and he played that way consistently throughout his career. So minus like Super Bowl victories or making it to the Super Bowl, like he shouldn't have really any knocks against him, you know. And as far as Eli and Ben Roethlisberger, if I had to pick all three between them, I'm taking PR every time.
Yeah.
I just want to hear about your relationship with LT and, you know, being such a crucial component to the offensive line and, you know, his historic season.
Man, I love LT, and I love the run block. So when I got there, it was like just a match made in heaven, right? It's like, hey, I would be sitting there because, like, he was like, man, boy, you fast. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Like, hey, just stay on my outside shoulder. I promise you, I'm just running this straight line. And if you stay in this pocket, ain't nobody going to touch you. You know what I'm saying? So, like, we used to, like, game plan, like, even before play. Even we had a play set. We would plan on, like, which way he's going to go before I even take off. So that way it was no second guessing. Like, everything's full speed, you know what I'm saying? And we seen LT run. When he comes out of the backfield, it's like he's being shot out of a rocket, you know what I'm saying? So just to be able to play with that caliber guy, to set the, you know, NFL rushing record, touchdown record, like, it was just amazing, man. I was blessed for my time in the NFL, and I love it. And I'm just excited to see the young guys do it today.
A lot of awesome young players in the NFL. Marcus McNeill, the former Chargers Pro Bowl left tackle, appreciate you taking some time. You promoting anything here with the Radio Row?
Yeah, you know what?
What do you got going on?
I got a couple podcasts. Well, in between doing daddy daycare, because that's what I do 90% of the time, right? But I actually got a couple podcasts. One is called Knee High to the Tree High, with me and my best friend from all the way from elementary school, played middle school, high school, college, all the way to the pros together. So now we just talk about life, football, you know, and the transition from high school, college to the pros, right? And then I got another show called Two Pros and a Joe with Greg Camarillo, wide receiver great from the Chargers, and we just talk straight NFL, man. So that's my outlet, you know what I'm saying? That's my time to, like, kind of release throughout the week, you know what I mean? So I just love talking sports, man. So that's what I'm doing now, and in between then I'm flipping flapjacks.
He's flipping flapjacks. He's talking sports. And before we let you go, who do you got on Sunday?
Man, you know what? It's tough to call. I'm going to put it like this. I can't call who's going to win because I don't know, right? But, like, the eye test is telling me the Rams should win. But I absolutely want the Bengals to win. And that's just how I feel about this game. You know what I'm saying? Like, the Rams on paper look like they're supposed to win this Super Bowl. They're at home. They got an all-star team. Like, go ahead and get it, right? But the Bengals is just something about this young team swagger that is just undeniable. So I'm on their side.
Marcus, we appreciate you taking some time. Former Chargers Pro Bowl left tackle. Great getting a chance to chat with you.
Thank you, Marcus.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys.
Have a good one.
Yep.
That was Marcus McNeill, former Chargers Pro Bowl left tackle. Really appreciate him coming on. Had some great guests. He was awesome. I really enjoyed getting a chance to talk with Marcus and all of our guests. You know, Doug was great, and getting Nick Mangold on. And as Radio Row rolls on here from the Los Angeles Convention Center ahead of the Super Bowl on Sunday, the Rams and the Bengals. These guys, I'm always interested to get their perspectives on any number of things. And Marcus in particular, a guy who certainly knows this area, knowing the Chargers organization, the Rams moving back out here as well, and such great insight from him.
Yeah, I mean, I think he had some – I mean, you said it already. I think all three of our guests so far have had great insights into a variety of topics. You know, one thing that we didn't get to ask Marcus, and unfortunately it's the nature of the beast, we can't have these guys on all show. He's a Pro Bowler. Obviously, Nick Mangold was a Pro Bowler. Guys that played in the Pro Bowl game, obviously, as the name entails. And, you know, I'm just kind of curious if we can get into this now. We even mentioned it a little bit off the top. This past weekend, we had the Pro Bowl, and it was, you know, in Las Vegas, big spectacle, and that's great and all. But frankly, it was two-hand touch football out there. The guys weren't really trying, and for years now, there's been this debate of is the Pro Bowl even worth it? Is it worth the players themselves, which you can understand? These guys are playing on non-guaranteed contracts, millions of dollars at stake. The game means nothing. Are you really going to go out there and risk potential injury and potentially your career and a payday? And I think, as we go on here, the quality of the game is suffering because the players aren't, going all out, which you can understand. So now I think it's kind of a question of, Nick, what is the future of the Pro Bowl? Should there even be a Pro Bowl going forward?
Well, I think there always is going to be, just because you're still getting 6.5 to 7 million people watching,
That's
and
true.
it's a profitable event. But at the same time, I don't think you're ever really going to convince players to do more than what they're doing right now. It's just not worth it. I mean, there's no reason that these guys, for a game that means absolutely nothing whatsoever, to go out and put anything on the line. And I think, short of the NFL saying, and maybe this wouldn't even do it, the winner of the Pro Bowl gets to host the Super Bowl or something like that, like Major League Baseball used to do.
I hated that.
I don't know that that's the right answer. I think that might be the only way to even incentivize it. But even then, do guys really care? Do they know that they're getting the Super Bowl? I mean, even in the major leagues, it's much easier to play that game because the risk of injury is certainly not as great, and you're going up and you're hitting and you're pitching, and it's an individual game. You don't want to get embarrassed regardless. You can still have a somewhat quality game, even if you're just going out and having fun. You're always going to take it seriously. There aren't levels really to playing baseball. In the NFL, it's so much different. You're just risking the injury, and whether it's serious, not otherwise, there's really just no reason to damage even your off season that way. It doesn't make sense from a player's perspective, and I don't want to say that this is something that's a lost case, but I think it really is.
Yeah, I mean, look, first off, before I dive into the specifics of what you said, I can't help but remember, we've all seen it a million times, that infamous clip of Sean Taylor laying the hammer down on, I don't remember.
Brian Moorman, Bill's punter.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You would know that, of course, Buffalo Bills. And, I think that's only like the one example, not being recent, as in that was in the last 20 years. I mean, the issue was, and you hear from older players, you see it on Twitter, I don't remember even specifics, but older players, played in the 90s and the 80s. I think it was actually, it was Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders came out and said something in a tweet. He said something like, and I don't have the exact quote in front of me.
Yeah, it used to be an honor to
it used
play
to be
in the
an
Pro
honor,
Bowl, and now guys don't
to
care.
play in the Pro Bowl, I had to prove that I was prime time. I had to show who I really was, which I think is a lot to respect, and I really get that. I don't know. It's such a tough situation. But then the alternative is, look, the NFL, obviously, at the end of the day, it's a business. They need to make money. The Pro Bowl, I don't watch it. I don't think you watch it. I don't think
I didn't.
I mean, I don't think most people. I mean, obviously, people are watching because they're making money off it. There are viewers. So there's a market there. The NFL, they're not going to give up a chance to make money. The question is, is there something else they can put in its place that would draw, I don't know, equivalent ratings? I mean, it's just the Pro Bowl, to me, I don't understand why people watch it. I mean, I get people do. Maybe people are just putting it on in the background. If you're a kid, maybe you like to watch it because you don't really get that they're not trying. But, if you're a regular NFL fan above the age of, I don't know, 15, are you really, find that game interesting? I don't know.
I don't know. I'd be interested to see if they would be more competitive if it was flag football.
Yeah, you know what? I was going to bring that up, too.
Yeah,
I mean,
that to me is interesting.
they do that thing now. Well, obviously, they have the skills, quote-unquote, competition the day before. They play the 40-yard dash, and they do all that kind of stuff. They recently instituted dodgeball as one of the contests or whatever. So, I mean, you're already letting the players play dodgeball. Why not just make it a full gym class and have them play flag football? But at the same day, same time, I think one of the players' concern, obviously, look, you don't want to get concussed. You want to get a big hit or something. But, the true devastating injuries in football are those non-contact injuries, making a quick cut on the grass and boom, there goes your Achilles, your ACL. I mean, flag football, yeah, you're not going to tackle anyone. And I'm not saying the injury risk is higher, but, I don't know. With these athletes, it's such a nuanced topic, I guess. I don't know. It's really hard to figure out.
Yeah, and it's a tough situation that I don't know that it needs so much solving. I think the NFL is in pretty good shape in that sense, and if they lose a little money on the Pro Bowl, I don't think it's going to make Roger Goodell and the owners lose too much sleep at night. They've got other stuff that certainly they need to worry about at the moment, but I'm not so sure that the Pro Bowl not being the greatest of events is a huge deal because I don't know what they can really do to fix it. There's just not a lot of incentive there. So it's a tough situation, but it is what it is at that point.
Yeah, I mean, and let's be honest. Talking about the Pro Bowl and its future isn't the most exciting topic, but it needs to be said. But something else that I kind of want to talk about is that, our colleagues have drifted off here. So just you and me hosting the show, which, as long as I'm on the mic, that's fine by me. me being the diehard Jet fan, obviously we had Nick Mangold on. You always dropping some Bills knowledge on us, being the diehard Bills fan. Look, we walked in here earlier today. I was fortunate. First of all, obviously a lot of people have never been here. The average fan, listener, the place is just immaculate being here. It's a true, dedication to the history of the game. It's honestly, there's parts of this place. It's like a museum here at the LA Convention Center. But
some of the sets for the bigger time radio shows
are
and
very
otherwise
nice
for the networks are really good.
But
Pat McAfee's got a palace.
He's
over
right
there
over here. He's screaming about every 20 minutes, so we hear him. But we see stuff. Obviously, the one good thing the Jets have is that Super Bowl III victory. There was a couple things dedicated to that. So
I should ask Nick Mangold if Joe Namath is a Hall of Famer.
That would have been interesting. But so obviously the Jets are on my mind, as they always are, and the Bills. Josh Allen was here. We didn't see him, unfortunately. But what I want to talk about with you is us being Jets and Bills fans, AFC East. Where do you see? Obviously, we got some big turnover now with the Dolphins. Mike McDaniel in there at head coach. The Patriots coming off what was a promising season, but faded towards the end. Obviously, look, the Bills are the kings of the AFC East. No one's going to deny that. But let's talk a little AFC East right now, because why not? What do you think about the future of this division? Who do you think? How do you see this playing out for the next couple of years?
I think the Bills are in really good shape.
Yeah, they probably are.
They really are, because Josh Allen is a superstar, and we've talked about this at various points through a number of different channels to get to this conversation. But I think Josh Allen is challenging for the best quarterback in the NFL. I mean,
we said really, that we were talking about
he's
that last
really
night.
That good. And just from physical gifts to the decision making to what he does with the context of that offense, his running ability, which I think, even though people have seen now how dangerous he is running the football, still don't give him enough credit. He was the best running back the Bills had this year.
Well,
and it's not even close. He was averaging
even
like 7 yards a carry.
When his rookie year, when he was completing the ball 50% of the time, he was still relying on those legs. The legs have always been a quality, part of his game. That hasn't faded as we have people running around. So excuse us as we're looking all over the place. I will say this. I'm obviously not a Josh Allen fan. I can't be. I'm not a fan of the Buffalo Bills. But, the development, what I see in Josh Allen is, and obviously to ask this of Zach Wilson would be absurd.
He's not going to get there.
I'm not saying he doesn't have the same natural athletic ability. I'm not saying he does. What I'm more so saying is this, the idea that, Josh Allen's rookie year was very, I think it would be fair. It was mediocre. It wasn't great.
No. You saw some flashes.
You saw flashes.
Passing the ball, it wasn't great.
Yeah, it was not big accuracy issues. Yeah, sophomore year, there was there was a jump improvement. And then by year 3, he was obviously contending for, as one of the better quarterbacks in the league, an MVP favorite, that kind of stuff. So I'm not saying Zach Wilson's going to get to that level. That's not what I'm hoping for. But as we're talking about the AFC East, what I see in the timeline of Josh Allen's development is what I want to see from Zach Wilson. I think Zach Wilson had a very mediocre rookie year, if you will. I don't think he was terrible. I don't think he was bad. I think he gets a little too much hate. I think, as is the nature of football, and as is the nature of someone screaming behind us, as we got crazy stuff going on.
Yeah.
It's always natural for fans, the media, whatever have you, especially in the New York market, to blame the quarterback. The Jets had so many issues this year, whether it was on the offensive side, the defensive side. The offense improved as the season went on. I was actually happy with some of the things that were going on.
Until they had 65 total yards in the last game
Yeah,
of the season.
okay, let's please. We're trying to have a civilized discussion. Do you mind? Anyway. So
civilized conversation, which includes you ignoring the facts here. They got as
better
as the season went on.
Better as the season went on. It was like 2 degrees and windy. And Zach Wilson was throwing to some guy named what was the guy's name? There was a wide receiver. His number one target that day was a guy they had to elevate out the practice squad.
Yeah, but who's
some
the
guy
Bills?
named like Tavarius Black. Who did the Bills have?
Who do they have?
Diggs.
Right. But
No.
In
It's rookie year. You're talking about the rookie year.
Again,
Andre Holmes and Kelvin Benjamin.
Can I finish my point?
No.
Please. What I want to see out of Zach Wilson is a similar time frame of development. He had a mediocre rookie year. He definitely showed a lot of flashes. I don't care how big of a Zach Wilson hater you are. He did show a lot of flashes. I want to see steady improvement next year. I want to see overall quality play. And then by year 3, I want to see some more elite development. But actually what I want to talk about is, we talk Jets, Bills. It's just going to get heated all day long. We're looking at the AFC East as a whole, and one team that's not represented at this table by fandom is the Miami Dolphins, who, of course, just made a new head coaching hire, who are, of course, embroiled in the Brian Flores situation. What do you think about the Dolphins going forward? I think when it comes to Miami, because we gotta consider them when we're talking about the AFC East. I still have major question marks about Tua. I really don't know if he's the guy.
Warranted.
And I don't know. And look, the LaFleur, the Shanahan coaching tree obviously has produced a lot of great assistants so far. So you would hope that Mike McDaniel can be a good head coach if you're a Dolphins fan. But even if he's a great head coach, is there really a lot to even get out of Tua at this point? I don't know.
Well, that's the tough thing. I was saying that if I were a potential head coach and I had options, and Mike McDaniel probably didn't if he wanted to be a head coach in this cycle, Kellen Moore probably will, and that made it a little bit easier for him to lay off really aggressively pursuing the Dolphins job. But I would have really thought long and hard about taking that Dolphins job because it's a tough place to be.
I mean, you already see right now
Tua is
with his
is
ownership
just not somebody
Yeah.
who I think you can win big with. That's
No.
not to say that you can't win, but those apparently aren't the expectations in Miami. And you can say whatever you want about the issues surrounding Brian Flores' dismissal and whether they were right, wrong, whatever the situation was, if it's true that he wasn't getting along with people in the way that he should have. But I think that, to me, was the most eye-popping thing because they were good the last couple of years. Not great, but they were good. They were competing. They win 8 games in a row. They finished 9-8 after going 10-6 a season ago.
2 winning seasons for the
Right.
first time in, I think it's over 20 years for Miami.
Exactly. So you're going to move on from that with, by everyone's admission, a limited quarterback. There's no way that you can watch the Dolphins play and say that he's on the level of a Josh Allen who beat Brian Flores all 6 times that he played him as the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. There's no way that you can say he's on the level of a Mahomes, a Lamar Jackson, a Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, the list goes on. And it's really a difficult spot for him to he's trying to show me Mac Jones
Mac
right
Jones,
now.
these Patriot fans
But
are
this is the whole
this
this is the whole
Kool-Aid
thing.
that they're
I wanna
drinking.
hear- I wanna hear Nick's point.
I might even say that Mac Jones right now is ahead of Tua.
I would say that.
Because I
But
think
they're
that
both
Mac
not good.
Jones, from a reading defenses perspective, is probably ahead of him. I mean, Tua's really limited in just the RPO game and can't throw the ball down the field. So it's just a difficult space to be in because you are undermanned and undergunned at the most important position in the NFL in a league where you have to have great quarterback play to win. That doesn't mean you always win, but it means that Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen loses because of how well Patrick Mahomes plays, or Mahomes loses because of how well Joe Burrow played. So it's just one of those things where I think you are really up against it if you are trying to go into a situation like that, in particular for Mike McDaniel with Tua in his own division where he's definitely not the best. He might not even be the second best, and I would tell you that we can figure out where Zach Wilson's development's going to take him. I'd want Zach Wilson right now over Tua.
I mean,
would.
I think I'd say this right.
No.
I mean, okay, that's just absurd.
I would.
Zach Wilson has so much more of a higher ceiling than Tua at this point. It's not
Yeah,
even
but
funny.
ceiling. Who cares about ceiling? The
Tua
Dolphins
has
could be
reached
good.
his ceiling. He's not. I don't care what Tua does. Tua. I'm sorry. I've seen enough of him
The ceiling
play.
does matter in
He's
this
the
conversation.
ceiling. You got to consider the conference that you're in. The AFC, and Nick just ran it off. This is possibly the most loaded conference quarterback-wise I have ever seen in the history of football. Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. Who else am I forgetting? Justin Herbert. I mean, we got like 5.
Derek Carr is pretty good, too.
Derek Carr's solid. Joe Burrow, he's in the Super Bowl, for God's sakes. I mean, that's 6-7 quarterbacks right there that are just absolute studs. If you're a team in the NFC, I'd be thanking your lucky stars that you're in the NFC. So my whole thing is, if you're an AFC team like the Dolphins, a team that doesn't have that surefire quarterback, when you're thinking, obviously at the end of the day, the goal for every team is to win a Super Bowl. That's what you want. That's any team that isn't trying to win a Super Bowl isn't trying. You play to win the game, as the great Herm Edwards said. And when you're a team in the AFC and you look at the competition, you realize, hey, we make the playoffs, we're going to have to go up against a Mahomes and Allen or Herbert, Burrow, whoever. So keeping that in mind, you need a quarterback that can match them in terms of athleticism, in terms of the cannon arm, the ability to just control a game. And I, to me, have already figured out that Tua is never going to be that guy. And I'm not saying Zach Wilson is going to be that guy. I'm not a Jet fan drinking the Jet Kool-Aid the way Patriot fans drink the Mac Jones Kool-Aid.
He's a Pro Bowler. I don't know.
Okay, that is just the
Oh,
dumbest
come on.
thing. You know who else is a Pro Bowler? Mitch Trubisky, the backup for the Buffalo Bills. I mean, the Pro Bowl is
And
the most
he even won an
meaningless
MVP.
thing. All Pro is the meaningful award. And so, I mean, look, no offense to the Patriot fans, but like, you guys had the greatest quarterback of all time, and that is fantastic. Power to you. You won 6 Super Bowls. He's the GOAT. He's the greatest quarterback who ever lived. I hate him, but I respect the hell out of him. He's just an absolute the GOAT. There's no dispute. But just because you had him doesn't mean that every other quarterback you get is somehow
every other. It's been Cam Newton and Mac Jones. It's not every other.
Well, both
quarterback.
aren't good.
But you now think that
We haven't even gotten to Bill Belichick here.
Patriot fans think that now every quarterback they get is just going to be the next Tom Brady. No, Tom Brady is a once-in-a-generation talent.
Yeah, I remember.
You might have a good quarterback. I'm not even saying Mac Jones is going to be bad. But the way that Patriot fans talk about Mac Jones, who was really exposed down the stretch of the season, losing, 3 of the last 4, 2 of the last 3, whatever.
4 or 5.
Getting shellacked in the playoffs. It showed his limitations. I'm sorry. He's losing Josh McDaniels to be he's going to the Raiders now. You bring in Joe Judge, which, I mean, I don't care who Bill Belichick thinks he is. You're bringing in Joe Judge to contribute to your team after that dumpster fire? Good luck with that, my friend. And then, it's not even a joke. They're seriously considering Adam Gase. They are seriously
I think it's going to be Bill O'Brien, though.
Well,
I
that's
like that.
in and of
It's gotta be him.
That in and of
Which
itself
is still not good.
still
but
not good.
Yeah, no.
Because the other thing is that these people think, and Tom Brady proved it by going to Tampa Bay. Now we're starting to get, just much like with Bill, I think a little bit of this shine at Bill wore off after Tom left.
Yeah,
and
I'm with you.
I will say this
we
too.
We can get there.
We'll get there in a second.
Yeah.
I want to say this right now. The other issue we have is this. The Raiders are like, oh, we need to hire Josh McDaniels. Look what he did in New England. That's like when they gave Adam Gase credit for Peyton Manning. A great quarterback is a great quarterback. And, it doesn't, as Tom Brady showed by going to Tampa Bay, he's going to play great wherever he goes. At the end of the day, coaches coach and players play, and you have to be realistic about what you're expecting. And keep in mind, Josh McDaniel, absolute dumpster fire of a head coach with the Denver Broncos. Like, what was that, 10 years ago?
Yeah.
But go ahead.
No, I think Belichick's overrated. I really do. And
well, I have
think,
some thoughts on that.
Like, I joke around and I say that he's Rex Ryan when he doesn't have Tom Brady, but, like, it's that type of record. Like, I think that Belichick's obviously a better coach than Rex Ryan, just from a detail-oriented perspective, and I joke about it a little bit. But at the same time, it's just proven over and over again that you can't win without a great quarterback. That's clear.
Yep.
And any coach is human when you don't have that. And that, to me, is the most puzzling aspect of the way the Patriots are trying to move forward without Tom Brady, to me, because they are trying to play this early 2000s style with the young quarterback. We're going to try and run the football. We're going to play great defense, and
That's
just
the
doesn't
classic
really
Rex
work.
Ryan. That's the Rex Ryan
But
ground
I'm
to
saying
pound.
that doesn't really work in
doesn't.
today's NFL. And Mac Jones is a good player, but I don't think he has that ceiling to be able to compete with these
Jack,
guys
you
going
can't-
forward.
you gotta agree
Okay,
with
yeah,
that.
but you know what? I can respond to it.
Yeah, let's
You
hear
guys
it. I
can't,
wanna
you
hear
can't
it.
give me a hard time before I
Go
even
ahead.
respond.
Go ahead.
What I'll say is that you guys forget that Cam Newton was the expected starter going into this season,
Okay.
right? Mac Jones wasn't even supposed to be the starter from day one.
Okay.
And you talk
Until he
about
was
Zach.
teaching Cam Newton the playbook.
Yes.
But what
And
does
you-
it have to do with Mac Jones' talent?
Because you talk about Zach Wilson in year 2, how you want to see progress.
Yeah.
How about Mac Jones showing actual progress in year 1, right? We want to see more out of him in year 2.
Didn't he regress as the season went on?
I mean,
He's saying
listen,
getting better in year 2, though. I do think that's fair. I just don't think there's a huge ceiling for him because there's not much else that you can get out of him. I mean, he'll learn defense is better. He'll be better at the line of scrimmage, but he still can't make those types of throws. Like, Mac Jones will know that this deep third is open, but he's not going to be able to get it there. One of the best plays of the season in the NFL was Micah Hyde's interception in that
was
wild card. I
fantastic.
mean, ridiculous. And
Insane.
Mac Jones, it was a good throw.
Yeah.
It was a good throw, and Micah Hyde made as good a play you're going to see a safety make in NFL history. I mean, that was insane. Patrick Mahomes throws that ball, it's a touchdown. Arm
Well,
strength.
it's not fair to compare Mac Jones.
But
Pick who
but
you
you
want.
have
Pick
to
who
be
you want.
realistic.
Mahomes, you want Lamar Jackson,
He
you
rattled them all
want Joe
off.
Burrow, whomever it is. I'm saying that it's just those physical things that regardless of where he grows outside of seeing it, that's on time, that's a great throw, it was accurate, and somebody else was able to take it away from him because of the physical nature of Mac Jones's arm. He just doesn't have that. So to me, that's where I teeter, and we can get back to the AFC East thing here. Like,
No, this is fun.
this is how this is where the game is going. I hate to, he's coaching where football is going, right? This is where football
Should ask
is
Nick
headed.
Mangold about that.
Right. So you get that opportunity. But Josh Allen is that physical specimen. Mahomes, he's got that arm strength. He has that mobility. I don't think people give Mahomes enough credit for how mobile he is and the ability to burn teams running the football. So they just don't do it as much design-wise. So I like those guys, and you bet on those types of talents to carry you through. And yes, there is the competitive nature. There is the reading defenses aspect, which I think is crucial. I think that's what made Tom Brady so good. You know, people talk about the competitive edge, whatever. He was so good at the line of scrimmage. He was as good as any coach, but actually being able to play and then make the throws. Mac Jones, for him to be elite like that, has to take that type of step, and that has never been taken before and may not be taken after Brady is out of the NFL.
But could he be as good as either Ryan Tannehill or Jimmy Garoppolo?
Yeah,
And this applies to Tua
neither
as
of them,
well.
but
could either of those guys be just as good as, or if not better, than Tannehill?
Throw away an AFC divisional round
that's what I'm
playoff
saying.
game.
Like,
I'm just
we're-
saying
we're
these are
trying to
good
win-
teams. These are
Tannehill's
good
But we're
proven.
trying
Tannehill's
to
proven
win
that
games.
you can't win with him.
Exactly. The whole point. I just said it. Anthony Anderson's here. Okay, all right. Celebrity sighting. The whole point is you play to win the game. You're the New England Patriots. You've built a dynasty, and now you're comfortable with just, we're fine. We're just going to try to lose in the divisional round now. You need to go out there and try to win.
But
and try
that to
to
me
beat
is
the
where
best.
I blame Belichick, because he knows this.
Yes.
There's no way that the greatest coach of all time doesn't understand that this is the way to go out and win in today's NFL. And he still was like, you know what, I'm so good, I can go out and win this way. And I just don't think that's right.
That's Belichick's hubris right there.
I'm going to bring guys in. We're going to win with defense. We're going to win with a rookie quarterback. We're going to win with Cam Newton, whatever it is. We're not really going to be aggressive. We're going to take the guy with a limited ceiling because we can go in and we can make sure that he is really that good.
Well, the flip side to
that
that,
to me is I don't like it.
the flip side to
I don't
that,
like him in personnel at all. The free agency this year was
The
a
free
disaster
agency
too.
was a mess.
Have fun paying Jonnu Smith $20 million
That was
next
absurd. How about N'Keal Harry,
Yeah.
Nelson Aguilar?
Yeah, N'Keal
this
Harry
is
sucks.
this is what this is
But
what
the
ha-
drafting,
Bill is just proven to be
the coaches,
a
the scouting,
madman.
they're not building an actual team.
Bill Belichick. This is what happened. He watches his golden child. He gets Brady all mad. He leaves. Goes AWOL. Brady wins the Super Bowl. Then what happens? Everyone starts the conversation, which needed to be had, of like who was more responsible for those titles. Was it Brady or was it Belichick? And now we got Belichick. He's by himself. He just watched Brady win a Super Bowl. So what does he do? He's like, I need to prove that it was me. So he goes out as also the GM and makes all these insane signings to try to rebuild his team, whatever. I mean, I'll give you Judon. I think Judon was a good signing. He had a good year.
He fell off the map at the end of the
he
season.
did.
guess it's
That
fair.
was very disappointing.
But I don't know. Just the Patriots. I'll be happy when Belichick.
I want
finally
Bill
goes.
O'Brien in there and to
I
see
want Adam
what,
Gase in there. Let's
no,
go.
No, I
Let's
want
go.
Bill O'Brien in there to see what kind of personnel decisions those two together can come up with.
I
That's
just-
what I'm really shooting for.
At the end of the day, the Patriots went 10-7, made the playoffs
And
with a
lost.
rookie quarterback. You can talk about ceiling, but to me, that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I'm just saying that
Fair.
I think that they are in a tough spot
Yeah.
to compete for the foreseeable
Yes,
future in the
that's my
AFC East
point.
because they are outgunned at the quarterback position, and the Bills have the better roster. Now, again, who knows what can happen, injuries otherwise, but you like where the Bills are right now from that perspective, and everybody else is certainly looking up. And Zach Wilson has that potential opportunity if he's able to really grow. I think he's got those physical traits that you covet as a
Yes.
number 2 overall pick, that where if he develops in the right way, I'll tell you, I'm looking for more in year 2. I mean, that to
that's
me
exactly.
is
I'm the
huge.
same
And
way.
I think that's fair, but you feel like he might be able to lead you to that spot, whereas I hate to say it, and it really pains me because you know how I love my Patriots fans.
Doesn't everybody?
I think they and the Dolphins are in a tough spot in the foreseeable future just because of the nature of the beast. And, it's going to be so much fun. I love, getting a chance again to talk with these guys just to get their perspective on, how great the quarterback play has been right now. And we had a chance to ask Marcus McNeill about Justin Herbert and, Nick Mangold, the quarterbacks that he was able to play with. But, the guys right now, in particular in the AFC, it's just so impressive, and it's going to be a battle for years and years. It's going to be tough. And how does Patrick Mahomes bounce back from a really suspect performance
He was-
in the
he was
AFC
asleep in the
Championship
second
game in
half.
the second half? The Chiefs seem to run out of gas a little bit. They've played a lot of football recently, the last couple of years, in a number of runs to 4 straight AFC Championship games, and it's going to be. I'm fascinated to see how he bounces back because, he's been great, and the cap hit's going to come in now. The Chiefs are going to have to do some work in continuing to field the pieces around him. They'll have Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, but rebuilding that offensive line is going to be, again, a priority as they did this offseason. and seeing what they've got left on defense will be interesting in a team that I think a lot of people really feel like is one of the top dogs in the AFC and has been for so long. And where does that leave a Cincinnati? You know, who saw Cincinnati coming, and they've got
Yeah, we
60
said that up
mil,
top.
and they've got 60 mil in cap space, you know, going into free agency this year. Do they choose to spend it? Where are they able to improve in the draft? And Joe Burrow is a guy who maybe is on the lesser end of those absolutely wow you with the physical traits, but everywhere he goes, he just wins. And he's been so good at understanding what defenses are trying to do to him and the weaponry that they have and how much Jamar Chase has meant to that offense. It's going to be a really fascinating sight to see the battle for the AFC in the last, you know, going forward here, you know, next 6 years.
Yeah, I mean, look, everyone talks about it. I mean, it's our generation. Everyone talks about and now that they're officially over with Brady's retirement, that era of Roethlisberger, Brady, Peyton Manning, Phillip Rivers, you know, that was just the AFC. And then obviously in the NFC, you had Drew Brees. You know, obviously Aaron Rodgers kind of overlaps into that era. But, you know, even when we think about that AFC lineup that I just mentioned, you know, that we considered that to be stacked at the time. And I'd never recall a time when there were just so much talent at the quarterback position. Now, obviously, this is the nature of the NFL. The NFL has now become an offensive league. It's all about the quarterback position. And, you know, defense, you know, between the rule changes and everything and the way that the game is officiated, it's very much an offensive game and focuses on the quarterback. So it's only natural that we're going to have bigger and better quarterbacks as time goes on. It's just, I don't know. To me, and this is how I view it. You know, you're in a different spot where you have your Bills, you know, essentially have been for the last 2 years a Super Bowl contender. They honestly, to me, that Chiefs-Bills game, well, obviously, I mean, obviously that's not what happened, but I think a lot of people at the time, before, you know, we were counting out the Bengals, they said that was the AFC Championship game because of how big the Bills were and the Chiefs were, and you know, so I think you're in a good spot because you have that guy that can go toe to toe. You have a great defense. You know, for me as the Jet fan, and you know, I think for those teams that aren't playoff teams, the teams that are rebuilding, the mediocre teams, you know, even if Zach Wilson were to develop into a really good quarterback, I don't even know if I'd feel comfortable because I just don't know. Even if Zach Wilson became an elite quarterback, am I gonna, you know, I just don't know, like, what is that even going to be enough? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Is that even going to be enough to even go toe-to-toe, win a round, win 2 rounds? It just, to me, it was already daunting to try to make the playoffs. And now with all these quarterbacks, it's even more daunting.
Fascinating to me because the NFL has almost turned into the NBA in a way, right? You have to have, at this point, that ultra star level quarterback. And we talk about this in the NBA all the time, but unless you have, you know, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving now that James Harden's been traded to Philadelphia, or, you know, James Harden and Joel Embiid, those types of guys, LeBron and Anthony Davis, anybody along those types of star power, you're not going to be able to compete in the NBA. And in the same way, in the NFL, the teams are proving that you're just not going to be able to compete without that top-level talent and guys who are just so incredibly good in the AFC in particular. You know, you're running an uphill battle. Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, those types of guys. I mean, it's really going to be tough to get through the AFC.
Yeah, and, you know, I mentioned it before. You know, it's shifting a little bit to the NFC picture right now, you know.
And what's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers, too?
What's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers? I mean, think about this. Think about how stacked the AFC would be if this happens. Let's say there's been all this talk, you know, Matt Eberflus or whatever, Broncos head coach now, correct? So
Nate Hackett,
excuse me. Eberflus is the Bears. I get the two of them mixed up. But Hackett obviously has the Aaron Rodgers connection.
Right.
You know, there was talk even before the season started, is Aaron Rodgers going to go to the Broncos? I personally don't think the Broncos is that appealing, but I mean, maybe it is
I
to
wouldn't
him.
do it.
I think the Packers, as standing, are
Right.
still more of an appealing option. So, you know, think about what would happen if Aaron Rodgers moved over to the AFC. But with the NFC, I mean, I want to talk about the NFC for a bit because now it's kind of like we're deciding what's going on now with, excuse me, as we have a lot of things getting sorted out to the side of us. You know, you think about the quarterback class. Justin Fields obviously drafted this year, Chicago Bears. I mean, what do you think? I wasn't overly impressed.
No, I wasn't
you
a
know.
huge fan of his coming out of college. I mean, I think he's a guy with the right mentality. I'm just not in love with, again, some of those physical things that we were
Physical
talking
traits,
about.
yeah.
He's more mobile, but he's not as big. I'm not a huge fan of the arm strength. I think that's a limitation.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned that. We also, when we think about the NFC, what's going to happen with Trey Lance? The guy drafted number 3 overall, didn't really play.
He'll start for the
He's
Niners.
he's going to start.
Yeah.
My
Is he
question
gonna be
is,
good?
what are we
Yeah.
going to get out of him?
Right.
The guy's played, what was it, 1 game in 2020 at
A
North
couple
Dakota?
of them. He
Oh, it was
played
2?
well, no, at North Dakota he played 1 game, and then he played a couple of games this year. His last appearance, he actually looked pretty good, threw for 250 yards.
No, I know. What I was saying in college, he doesn't
Yeah.
have that college development.
Played
What I'm saying.
one-
I know
played
he
one
played
year-
a little
one
bit in
game
the
at
NFL.
North Dakota
Yeah, that's what I'm
State
saying.
his last year.
And he played a little bit in the NFL this year. They started off the season. They were going to do that whole kind of college system with 2 quarterbacks, putting him in a bit. He started some games when Jimmy was out. I didn't really watch him. I couldn't really tell you. But with the future of the NFC, when you got a Trey Lance, Justin Fields, the younger guys, we don't know what's happening with Aaron Rodgers. Brady just retired. What's going on with Tampa Bay? I mean, the one thing to think about is this. What is the future with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? What about Aaron Rodgers? Are you someone who's enticed to maybe go down to Tampa Bay and hop into that situation? Now, I don't think that's likely with the cap situation and all the free agents, but I don't know.
Yeah, that it is certainly a place to think about. And as Mike mentions, cap situations and free agents, it's a great time to bring on Leigh Steinberg, NFL agent. Leigh, we appreciate you taking some time with us here on Radio Row. First things first, how hectic a time is it for you after the Super Bowl getting all these contracts sorted out?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's hectic this week. You got players in the game, but then I throw my big Super Bowl party on Saturday. So that's really our focus now is we're going to be at Sony Studios, and we have a brain health summit. So I've been working on the concussion issue for years and years. And we're exploring how to cure concussion and how we've got neurologists from across the country. I had a crisis of conscience back in the late 80s, early 90s. Players kept getting hit in the head, and no one could tell us how many were too many of the rest. So we started holding conferences, and we'll hold the next one now.
Leigh, obviously we're here at the Super Bowl. We're here at the LA Convention Center. Some of the players that you've represented played in some big Super Bowls, Steve Young, Troy Aikman. When you think about how can you quantify what it means to a player's marketability, their value for them to get to the big game? I mean, you think about there have been some all-time great players, Dan Marino, or you want to talk about even someone like Odell Beckham Jr., who took until now to finally get here. We still think of them as these great, huge, marketable players, big contracts, but can you quantify the difference it makes to actually get to the Super Bowl and then finally win one?
Yes, if a player performs dramatically in this venue, because you have so many people following it that don't follow ordinary football. They may not watch a game during the year, but they watch the Super Bowl. And because the numbers are so high, it allows a player who performs dramatically here and on a winning team to transcend the narrow genre of hardcore sports fans and move into household name status. And that consists of late night and early morning talk shows and People Magazine and all the rest of it. So I remember years ago when Troy Aikman won his first Super Bowl, and I said, Troy, do you know what's happened? And he said, yeah, we won the game. I said, no, you entered the game as Troy Aikman, excellent quarterback, and you're leaving the game as Troy Aikman, superstar. And the marketing took off from there. Steve Young, the same way. Patrick Mahomes, we waited for a couple years, didn't do a lot of endorsements, and then, again, wins the Super Bowl, and off we go. So this is the biggest marketing event in American sports.
What do you advise players when they have success in this type of environment, when all the eyes are on them to get the opportunity of, everywhere, whether it be, marketing opportunities, other outlets, to go and be able to make themselves available to media and take advantage of those opportunities? What do you stress to them?
That the engine that pulls the train is success on the field, so that you can't lose sight of the need to train and the need to stay grounded and all the rest of it. But we're in a new age with social media and players presenting themselves, and the new currency is how many followers do you have on Twitter, how many followers on Instagram. I mean, that's what sets the stage. So it's, you want to, if you're successful, you want to have the fun, you want to have the excitement, but you want to keep balanced also.
Leigh, a player that you represented was Warren Moon, and I just wanted to know if there are any parallels that you see between his situation and what's going on with Brian Flores right now.
You know, it was 1978, and at that time there was a segment of personnel in the NFL who thought that the so-called thinking positions, which was quarterback, center, middle linebacker, that blacks didn't have the aptitude for it, or they didn't have the comfort factor with a black quarterback. And Warren went to Canada, and now, as it worked out, he spent 6 years up there. He came back, 3 leagues negotiated against each other. He was a pure free agent. He signed the biggest contract in history, and he made the Hall of Fame. But it's incomprehensible to me that you would have 32 teams, and out of them, there are only 2 black head coaches. It just, something is not functioning with the system the way it is, and they need to make an analysis and figure out how you can do merit-based selection that gives you more diversity.
You know, Leigh, you mentioned some of the bigger name clients that you've had, Troy Aikman, Steve Young, Patrick Holmes, guys that have had tremendous success in the NFL. But you also represented Ryan Leaf, who, of course, is one of the more infamous, very high picks in his NFL career, or ultimately didn't pan out, number 2 overall. What's it like as an agent when you have a guy who comes into the NFL, it's such a big name, everyone's expecting the world of him, and then for it ultimately not to work out, I don't want to say fail, but not meet expectations. As an agent, what is that like, and what is your perspective, and what would it like to deal with all of that?
The difficult thing, first of all, we profile clients, so we're looking for role models who will set up a high school, college, and professional scholarship fund at the high school, give back at the college, charitable foundation. So we've raised almost $900 million for charity. So you don't get a lot of situations that happen like Ryan.
Yeah.
The problem there was, as hard as we tried to draw him out of his shell, he was resistant. And he's here, and I've talked to him, and when he started to get criticized, he felt like the world was against him, and he kept withdrawing and withdrawing and withdrawing, and it got worse and worse. Don't think we didn't try to bring in doctors and a variety of different people to help him, but at a certain point, it becomes beyond your power. And the good news about Ryan Leaf is that he's sober. He's being a great role model for all sorts of people with those issues. And he's, at the end of the day, back on television being an analyst. So it had a happy ending, but it was terrifying for a while.
Talking to NFL agent Leigh Steinberg here. We appreciate you taking some time with us here on One. Curious for you, as the Super Bowl wraps up, head into the NFL offseason, what is the process like when teams are contacting your clients, trying to engage them and eventually get their services, and maybe somebody comes in with an offer that you can't believe and say, no, my guy's worth so much more than that?
So if you're talking about free agency, what you want to do is lead the process. So you're not waiting until the season's over. You're already, if this is a player you think won't re-sign with the team, you're already looking at rosters and places he could go, and maybe talking a little bit to general managers and laying the foundation. In free agency, unlike the draft, it's the free market. So if you have more than one bidder, then where a veteran negotiating to redo with the team, we're going to show stats, we're going to show comparisons, we're going to show everything to justify a figure. In free agency, it's just who will pay what and what's the largest figure. Now, money may not be the only criteria for a player. They may care about being on a winning team, the quality of coaching, the geographical location, how good it is for their families. So not everybody, it's strictly that. But you sit with a player and you suss out what their priorities are.
Leigh, I'm just interested as well. Obviously, it's Super Bowl week. We're talking football. That's the focus right now. But, you very famously were involved in the effort to keep the San Francisco Giants in San Francisco. You played a hand in keeping the A's in Oakland. So obviously you have a bit of a baseball connection there. As you look at baseball, and I know we're doing football talk, but I think it's just a big story right now in sports in general, the relationship between owners and players. You look at the lockout that's going on right now. As an agent, when you look at a lockout situation, obviously at the end of the day, your job is to help, your client make money. How much does a lock? Obviously, it seems obvious, but what kind of role does an agent play during a lockout? What do you do with your clients at that time? Just you have any thoughts on the current lockout situation? I don't know if you have anything to say about that.
I think any type of labor strife that plays out publicly hurts the brand and pushes fans away because, look, they're not going to have empathy with millionaires fighting with billionaires. And so that needs to be done quietly behind the scenes, and you would hope ahead of before when an actual lockout happens. So it's a failure at any time. But hopefully this one gets over quickly because as we start to get into later February, it's going to be the time that spring training pitchers and other people end up showing up. And the minute that we actually start missing, remember, we've been through a COVID pandemic time. And the exciting thing about baseball was that they had live crowds. And so it's coming back. I think it's dangerous to mess with the crowd, with the fans in this way.
Leigh, appreciate you taking some time. One last one for you here. What is the most exciting part of this Super Bowl party?
Being able to collapse after it. It's giving humanitarian awards. It's mixing. It's where you teach your young players how to network, how to spend 5 minutes with someone in a conversation, get their card. It's watching the rookies be part of pro football for the first time.
You actually, Leigh, I know Nick said that was the last question, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you. It's rumored that you are the inspiration for Jerry Maguire, the Tom Cruise movie and the titular character. I'm just curious, how much of the character is like you, and do you find that movie does a good job representing sports agency?
I thought it humanized sports agents. Cameron Crowe called me up, the writer-director, in 1993 and asked if he could follow me around for the next couple of years. Well, I didn't think it would be 2 years, but he could follow me around to pick up atmosphere for a movie on a sports agent. And he went to the draft in 93 when Drew Bledsoe got drafted. He went to the league meetings. He came to games with me. He spent time in my office. He went to the Super Bowl with me. And I told him stories, lots and lots of stories. So what parts of what he used is between me and he, but then I was technical advisor, so I had to vet the script to make sure the willing suspension of disbelief that holds you in a motion picture didn't get broken. Yeah. And then he assigned me the actors, like I had Cuba Gooding Jr., who I took down to the Phoenix Super Bowl and made him pretend he was my client all week.
Method acting,
And
all right.
let me put it this way, it's been 25 years this year for that film, but still when I go to an airport or go out to dinner, someone's going to run up to the table and say those four iconic words that start with "Show me the
money." There we go. Well, Leigh, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And I'm glad we could talk a little bit about Jerry Maguire, because why not? Thank you so much, Leigh.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Leigh. That Leigh Steinberg, NFL agent. Some great insight about the NFL offseason, talking about showing me the money and everything else in between. As one-on-one rolls on here from Radio Row. Nick DeLuca, Mike Leegan, Jack Roche, and Mike Messina here, getting abandoned at the table. Picture with Leigh Steinberg, the photo op, but that's all right. We'll stick with you here all afternoon long as we head on from 1 to 4 here in Los Angeles in the convention center ahead of Rams
not
and
to cut off
Bengals.
Nick, but it would not be a true Hollywood experience without a photo opportunity, would it?
Well, not to cut me off, but cut me off. I mean, it is
I've been
what it
trying
is.
my best to get some pics of you guys.
No, I know you've been doing a great job, and notice how Roche just quietly puts the headset back on. He's all
I'm not
set.
Roche.
He's right in there,
I'm
and then
big,
I'm talking. I'm,
brash
I'm
and
just
loud.
trying to hold the show together, and now I guess it wasn't to be. Whatever I was saying. We'll move on. It's just true. I wasn't invited to the photo, so it is what it
I
is.
thought you were getting up. I didn't realize you
Well,
were
we
still
got
in town.
someone's got to host
I mean,
the
that is
show.
well, I don't know.
It was for Westwood too.
Someone's got to
You
host
should
the
have been
show
there.
here. Yeah, I know. I should have been.
Oh well.
I should have been there. What are you going to do? But great insight from Leigh about contracts and things, and that's something that is coming up sooner rather than later. After Sunday, everybody's focused to the NFL offseason, the NFL draft, and what additions can each team make. Some with more cap space than others. Of course, the Patriots down toward the bottom in that arena, but some teams really well positioned to try and make a few moves, make some improvements to their roster, and see if they can't be the two teams that are here at Radio Row and otherwise preparing for the Super Bowl in the next season's time. So really should be interesting to see what goes on in the NFL offseason too.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the NFL, you can debate it. I mean, I think, I'll say this, the MLB offseason this year before the lockout was pretty exciting because everyone was in a rush to get a deal done.
The deadline is so
important. And we didn't
yeah.
have that long, drawn-out MLB offseason, so maybe that's a positive to come out of the lockout if there's any. But I think the NFL offseason is up there among the best. I mean, you want to go NBA, I'm just more of an NFL guy to begin with, so I find that the NFL offseason is, it's an exciting time. It's a fun time. And I think, for it doesn't matter what team you root for. I don't care if it's a bottom of the basement team, a team that's a Super Bowl contender or a potential championship game contender. Your team is, as a fan, you're excited for the offseason because you're either thinking one or two things. You're thinking, hey, my team's rebuilding. We're trying to get back to being a quality franchise. This offseason, can we get some pieces in here to do that? Or if you're a Super Bowl contender, a playoff contender, you're looking at it as, hey, maybe we're one piece away. We can target this guy. Boom. That puts us over the hump. Maybe we can finally get there. I mean, you can look. I don't care what team you want to pick out at your time. Look back over history. There's always so many Super Bowl teams where they had that one addition that really changed the roster, changed the team. You want to talk about Tom Brady? That one addition that completely changed the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, turned them into Super Bowl winners and contenders. So, I think the NFL offseason, it should be exciting. I just wish, and we mentioned it with Doug Freeman. It's so the NFL season goes by so fast. Now we're at 17 games now. We have the wild card, a divisional championship, and then the Super Bowl. And it seems like it was just yesterday, the beginning of September, the season was getting started, and now we're done. And it's sad. The NFL, and we can talk about new leagues getting started, spring leagues, whatever. The NFL will always be king. And, it's sad when it ends, but I think free agency gives us a bit of an extension. It tides us over, before we get into training camp and, all that kind of stuff preseason. So
yeah, the NFL does a great job with it, and it's always interesting to see what's going on and what improvements can be made. And I think that the Cincinnati Bengals really give a lot of people hope, seeing the way that they were able to go out and rise to stardom after Joe Burrow gets hurt. They win only a few games last year, and then really such an incredible turnaround to see them here in the Super Bowl. And the Los Angeles Rams, a team that was up and down, not thrilled with their number one overall pick quarterback, in a huge offseason for Les Snead and for Sean McVay to say, we're going to revamp this entire organization. Matthew Stafford's available. We're going to make it work. Cap situation, we don't care. We're bringing in Matthew Stafford to shoot our shot at getting here to the Super Bowl, and they did it. So a lot of hope from both of these organizations, showing that you can really just turn everything around in a matter of months if you are able to put together the right moves with the right coaching staff, with the rest of the right players. And, I'm really fascinated to see what happens throughout the rest of this offseason, and it should be a really interesting one. So we continue our shuffling here. Marcus Capone from SEAL Team 6 joining us here on One, New York's longest-running sports call-in show. Marcus, we appreciate you taking some time. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. This has been a very fulfilling week, educational. It's the first time I've been here at Radio Row, and so I've met a lot of good people. We've done a lot of great interviews, and I hope to be back next year and kind of talk about why we're here. So
Absolutely. First opportunity at Radio Row. What has this experience been like?
It's just been informative, educational. What a great networking opportunity. Everyone's been very, very cordial, friendly. I think everyone's here for the same reasons. They want to learn. They want to tell their story. They want to talk about the big game on Sunday. They want to talk about the halftime show. It's been great. I'm looking forward to the game on Sunday, and just thanks for having me here.
Marcus, a pleasure to speak to you here on One-on-One. I'm curious, you went to Buds. Not a lot of people really know what that is if they're don't have a military family or never really went to the military. Can you just explain what Buds is and how hard it is to kind of get through that program?
Yeah, Buds is Buds is an acronym. I think it was in 1962, the foundation of the SEAL teams, or the start of the SEAL teams. Buds is Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL Training. It's basically boot camp for SEALs. My class started with 175. We ended up with 29 original, so it's a very high attrition rate. And but it's designed that way, right? It's not for everybody, and it's just a very intense 6-month selection course. Really, they just want to see if you want to be there, and if you can prove to the instructors that you want to be there physically and mentally, then they'll take you and they'll train you how to be soldiers. But they won't take you and train you how to be soldiers until they want to know that you're really bought in.
What was the hardest part about Buds for you? We always see videos of the trainees in the water getting sprayed with the hose, on the ground doing flutter kicks and stuff like that. What was the most challenging part for you physically and mentally?
Yeah, I think that I've been asked this question a lot, and I always try to think back. Well, what was difficult during Buds? I was a swimmer all through high school. I was a sprinter, and I was a lifeguard growing up. So the water for me was fun and easy, and really most of the water evolutions I didn't have any issues with. And even the stuff on land, I was a college football player and an athlete, and so the hardest part for me, and I think like many, is just getting out of bed every morning. So you work so hard during the day that when you go to sleep and your muscles just stop, and you roll out of bed the next morning, it's almost like, if you did 2 or 3 days, if you played football, this is like doing 10 a days. Edema starts to build up, you start to swell, and you're just sore. Many individuals quit actually in the morning. So it's not like there's an evolution that's very difficult, like doing push-ups or running, where they're just like, I can't take this, I ring the bell. That happens, absolutely. But a lot of times it's in the morning. They wake up and they go, oh, by the way, it's San Diego in the wintertime. It's like 48 degrees in the morning. The water, the Pacific Ocean's like 58. And you, in your mind, in an hour you're going to be in the water. And you're just like, what, I can't do that. I can't even think about doing that. So, and guys ring the bell. And so I just thought the constant grind of getting up every day and then knowing you're going to get your ass kicked. You literally are going to get your ass kicked that day. You're going to be freezing cold. You're going to be sandy. And you're going to be miserable. And by the way, you better love it if you want to be here.
Is there any part of you that misses that? Because for me, I went through Marine Corps boot camp, nothing like what Buds is. And I miss it all the time. I wish I could go back, wish I could go through all the training again. Do any part of you miss that at all and wish you could relive those memories?
I miss it so much, probably like you. I miss all of it. I miss the camaraderie, the teamwork, my friends, the tribe, the community. I had some of the best individuals ever, I think, that I'll ever work with. Of course, that I'm still in touch with and still friends and helping today. I think that's the part you miss. I do miss the day-to-day. I miss working out as a group. I miss traveling. I mean, we traveled a ton to, a lot of cool places to train, and of course, traveled to places like, Iraq and Afghanistan to go to war, but we also traveled to places like, Germany and Switzerland and Italy and got to enjoy kind of the world. And so I miss all of it.
You mentioned Iraq and Afghanistan. You first commissioned to SEAL Team 10, Lone Survivor, a known movie everyone knows, that you were part of the task force in that scene. Is everything that went down in that movie true? Because I know obviously Hollywood plays effect, but how true was that movie compared to the real life events?
Yeah, there was, I'd say Hollywood had a lot to do with that movie. And there was bits and pieces that they took, and they, I think they did really well. And then there was other parts of the movie that were nowhere near close to what was happening. I think at the end when they show the helicopter gunships coming in and like shooting up the villages, like that, that never happened. But again, they got to make a movie because the idea of making a movie is making money, and so they want to make it as exciting. But the storyline is almost as close as they can get, and the other part, unfortunately, Mike Murphy, I went through buds with, and he was a close friend. None of us really know is that exactly what happened, at that time. So, but it was, they try to get it as close as they can. I think Hollywood's done a very good job bringing what's happened overseas back here and trying to, at least give the public from a real good vantage point of like, hey, this is really what it was like, and really, at the end of the day, the excitement is what people want to watch, but I think what they're doing a good job is trying to get people to feel inside like, hey, this is really what guys and girls are going through overseas.
13 years of combat experience, 7 deployments, 2 combat deployments, 2 Bronze Stars with Valor, 2 joint commendations with Valor, 1 Navy comm with Valor, and selected to SEAL Team's Tier 1 unit, SEAL Team 6, the community's most highly regarded SEAL team. After all those accolades you've had, what is the favorite part about the military for you, whether it's traveling, whether it's a deployment? What was it for you?
Oh, my favorite part of the military, I never, of course, signed up for the money. Nobody does that.
Of course.
I think again, it was just being part of just an amazing unit that all individuals thought alike. Everything it was high accountability. We were a high performing team. So, you wouldn't let each other get out of shape. You traveled together, you slept together, you did everything together, and so that was, I think, my favorite part was just being around individuals who were just like-minded and always competing. It didn't matter if you started eating well, like everybody started eating well, and if somebody kind of veered off and started eating crappy, you'd get on that individual because like at the end of the day, you're all working together, not for the Super Bowl. Our Super Bowl was like taking out the number one ISIS fighter or Taliban fighter. Like that was our Super Bowl. That's what we trained for. And so when we got to do that as a unit, as a team, it felt like the big game. And, we would celebrate after and we put music on before we went out, just like you would for, as being an athlete. So.
Marcus, wait, is my mic on? There we go. I know that you and your wife have an organization that's committed to helping veterans readjust and obviously some of the struggles that they have after their service. I was just wondering if you could speak to the mission of your organization and what kind of led to its founding.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, and that's why we're here. When I left military service, I thought life was just going to be all honey and it's going to be just easy. It was the opposite. Transitioning out of the military alone is hard enough. Transitioning out after 15 years of combat, 15 years of football and 13 years of military as a breacher and everything else, it takes a toll on the mind and body. And my body was okay, even though I had some real lower back issues. My head, I thought was okay, but it really wasn't. I was going through a lot of just cognitive issues that I didn't have while I was serving. Started, becoming very depressed, isolating, cognitively, my memory recollection wasn't good. I just didn't understand what was going on. Then I started being very impulsive and angry and outbursts and losing my way, while I was driving, and just all these things started happening. And it kind of came to a tipping point. All the Western medicine approaches wasn't helping. I'd been to all the brain clinics and the pharmaceuticals that, the doctors like to prescribe you. I found healing outside the U.S., something that is on this new renaissance, which is psychedelic medicine, but it was psychedelic-assisted therapy. So it wasn't like just the drug. It's this whole program. They use the drug as like kind of foundational tool, but it's all the work that goes into it that makes it successful. So what you can do in 10 to 15 or 20 years with talk therapy, you do in about a week with psychedelic medicine, which is, when you hear about that, it's hard for people to wrap their head around it. But done correctly with the proper prep work from the therapist, and then you do the medicine, and you go on your journey. And in your journey, your psychedelic experience, when done properly, but it's not a fun experience. You're actually doing very high doses of the medicine. So these aren't like what they call recreational doses, which a lot of people out there are listening to may have done. These are high doses, so there's a lot of puking involved, and you're in bed, and you do not want to, like, you can't even walk, but you're actually revisiting a lot of your past traumas. If you have a lot of traumas that are affecting you mentally, like, you're actually facing, like, your demons, basically, and you face those demons, and it's like lifting rocks out of the bag. You just feel lighter, and when you're done, I mean, you guys know, and everybody listening knows, the only way to really deal with stuff is like to deal with it face to face. And if you kind of hide it, it lingers with you forever. So that's what psychedelic medicine, you can't hide from it. It forces you to face the demons. Guys who have addictions and all this stuff, they come out of these journeys not addicted anymore to alcohol or opioids or heroin, whatever they're doing, because they actually saw the reason why they're addicted in the first place during these quote unquote trips. And so, psychedelic medicine is something that we believe in. Vets, our organization, after I went through my first treatment, my wife and I just said, we have to share, like, the world needs to know about the healing power of these medicines. We formed our nonprofit, Veterans Exploring Treatment Solutions. We're at vetsolutions.org. We have now funded over 450 combat veterans to go outside the U.S. and do the same exact treatment. And the funding is somewhere between $3,500 and $5,000. So we've raised enough money to be able to cover these individuals, and we'll be able to help a lot more. Now we're working on advocacy work and passing laws and doing research with places like Stanford and Ohio State and Johns Hopkins. And so it's just phenomenal to see how individuals are healing. And why we're here, I came here with Jake Plummer, former quarterback, and Robert Gallery, number 2 round draft pick behind Eli Manning, and these two were phenomenal NFL players. And when they left the league, they both started dealing with the exact same things that I was talking about, what the veterans are dealing with, and that's high-performing veterans and high-performing athletes have this bond, type A, and we're constantly, we're beating the shit out of ourselves. When you stop, it's when all the issues happen, and so we all connected because we're all doing the same things. Robert Gallery listened to me speak on Marcus Luttrell's podcast. Marcus, I told you, Marcus and I are close friends, and yes, that was my task unit. Robert said, man, everything that you spoke about on that podcast is everything I was dealing with, and I needed that. I needed whatever helped you, I needed. And Jake Plummer went through the same thing, and so we got invited up here to really just, we're good friends now, and just partner and talk about this. Like, mental health is not, it's stigmatized, but it's not a thing that we shouldn't be afraid to talk about. And I remember growing up, I'm 45 now, and I remember, my parents would whisper and say, oh, their son is on Adderall, or, they're taking Ritalin, or, and it was like this secret of, and that person was targeted, and it was a bad person all of a sudden. But we got to, all those kids that were on Ritalin now are running like multi-billion-dollar companies, right? So, we just have to look at this a different way, and all we're doing is being vulnerable and saying, hey, I had some issues, I needed some help, I'm back, I'm good, and I just want to spread the word, and we want to help more. So,
Marcus, I actually, as you were speaking, I put 2 and 2 together, and I'm realizing I've heard you speak before. I heard you speak on the Duncan Trussell Family Hour.
There you go. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of him and his content.
Oh, cool.
I guess just hearing what you just spoke about, and how different substances have helped different people, how important is it to have someone like that kind of demystifying these taboos that, we kind of in the past just speak hush-hush under the table about?
We have to. And now, are you talking about psychedelic medicines in general, or just like mental health, and like what kind
just
of these?
Any sort of treatment to mental health, or just a substance that could help someone in the way that, you spoke about how vets, it's at times to the average listener, maybe psychedelic treatment is a tough first, thing to wrap your head around.
It's completely tough because, again, I think we all grew up, just from what we've heard, and a lot from the U.S. government, but, from others, hey, psychedelic medicines, or, these are recreational drugs, and people are using them at raves. And by the way, that is all true. Like, psychedelic medicines are being used recreationally, and they are being used at concerts and for fun and things like that. But everything can be abused and used in different ways. What we're talking about here is not a recreational use of psychedelics. This is like a very high dose of like medical use psychedelics. And, I think they used to joke about the term of like cannabis and medical cannabis. No, it's still cannabis, right? But psychedelic therapy is definitely, it is still utilizing the same drug. It's just utilized in a different way. So it's utilized along with therapy, and that's why it's called psychedelic-assisted therapy. In combination, there's literally nothing out there that works better, right? So the drug by itself will not work better. Therapy by itself will not work better. When you combine the two, the statistics are just unbelievable. The research is out there. Right now, MDMA just posted, they just posted a phase 3 study on MDMA, 70% success rate. There's nothing out there for PTSD. There's nothing out there that comes even close to that efficacy. And so, in the next couple of years, you're going to see a lot of these medicines become legalized for medicinal use. And there's a group out there, a whole world out there of individuals trying to decriminalize this stuff. And unfortunately, number one, it's not my fight. Like, I'm fighting to make sure that individuals receive the mental health care treatment they need utilizing these substances. I need to understand and learn more about the decriminalization of all this stuff. To me, I don't know. I'm not sure yet that the U.S. is ready to walk in a retail store and just be able to buy a bag of whatever they want to go run around. But again, it's not my fight, and so I just want to stick to what I know and what we're trying to do.
Yeah, Marcus, first off, we really appreciate having you on, and we don't want to keep you all day. Just to kind of like one last question to kind of wrap this all up. What is just one thing that the average listener right now can do to just show gratitude to a veteran in their lives or someone they know, or maybe even get involved with your organization in some capacity? How can we, as the average American, just help the veterans in our lives?
Yeah, again, be open, be ambassadors to what we're doing. I always tell everyone, come to our website and just learn what we're doing. And I feel like we're at the kind of tip of the spear for the rest of the industry. We are at vetsolutions.org. Of course, you can donate. We always need resources. We live and die by donor dollars. But then become ambassadors. Throw dinners in your hometowns and invite people to learn and understand this stuff. And maybe we'll come out and chat and have a good time.
Marcus, last one before we let you go. Again, thank you for coming on. I've lost some of my best friends from the military to their demon, just like you mentioned. What advice do you have for people who are struggling coming out of the military but don't want to go seek help or talk to a therapist because of the stigma around it? What can you say to them to kind of give them that motivation to go get that help they need? Please
Raise your hand and say, I need help. We do that. I do that. I worked at a very fast-paced, highly trained operational unit, and guys that are just some of the best and brightest, those guys are raising their hands for help. It's not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of strength, because if you get better, then your family gets better, your business partners get better, their kids get better, your kids get better, and because now you're healed, you can go heal thousands more. So how can that be a bad thing? Right now you just became a position of power. And so I just tell everyone, this is not a sign of weakness. No one is ever going to tell you that you're soft and suck it up. And you know what? The ones that do that, just push those individuals out of your life, because there's 50 or 100 more that's going to welcome you with open arms and say, yep, we got you. We'll help you.
I love that. Thank you so much, Marcus Capone, member of SEAL Team 6. We really appreciate you coming on. It was a great talk to you.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
Well, that was Marcus Capone, SEAL Team 6, joining us on the program. We really appreciate having him on today. Really great to hear his story. And you know what? We're here to talk sports and, kind of get the idea about the Super Bowl. And obviously, look, I think we get caught up in the idea that, hey, we're very focused on our team, the Jets, the Mets, the Knicks, whatever you're focused on. And I think sometimes, whether it's sports, whether it's anything, you can kind of get wrapped up and lose sight of what's really important in our lives. So, I think it was great to kind of we've got some great guests today, and I really appreciate having them all on. But, I think it was really great to have Marcus on to kind of help recenter us and realize that despite the glitz and glamour of the NFL, the Super Bowl we have going on right here, what matters is the people in our lives. And we got to give thanks to the veterans in our lives, too, because they've sacrificed so much in the defense of freedom and the defense of this country. So, props to props to Marcus for coming on. We're talking about some serious topics, and we really enjoy hearing from him. And Nick has now sat back down with us.
Yes, I'm back here. Well, I had to get a chance to catch up with Greg Cosell, NFL Films, the guy who's going to have such great insight for us on this Super Bowl, the Rams and the Bengals coming up on Sunday. Greg, appreciate you taking some time. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How you guys doing?
We're good. Thank you so much. And curious, just, I know that you're a guy who's really good with the film study, breaking things down. What do you see ahead of this matchup between the Rams and the Bengals?
That's a very open-ended question.
Well, I just, I wanted to give you the floor. What are you seeing?
Well, I think one of the main things to look for in this game is what tactics the Bengals deploy to compensate and camouflage the fact that they have an offensive line weakness. Mm-hmm. We know that it's no mystery to anyone. It's not a scoop. So the question becomes, how do they deal with that? My sense is they're going to want to see this game as a four-quarter game where the tactics that they deploy early can build and work over time. And by that I mean they're going to need to run the ball. So the question is, what kind of runs? What kind of runs will best accomplish what they want to get done and will marry best with their passing game to minimize pass rush? And I think they'll start with outside zone, because what outside zone does is it gets a defensive line moving laterally, and then put Burrow under center and go with the play-action pass game off outside zone, because when the D-line moves laterally, they're not rushing the quarterback initially. So all that tough stuff takes time to percolate. They were able to do that in the AFC Championship game. A large reason they were able to do that was also because of the fact that the Chiefs didn't really score in the second half, so they were able to stay with the run game and make it a four-quarter/overtime game. So I think there's other things I think you'll see from the Bengals to try to compensate for their O-line. You'll see the screen game. You'll see the boot action pass game. So will these things work? Only the game will tell. But I'll be looking for those kinds of things, because obviously by choice they can't have Joe Burrow drop back 45 times, because you can't live on quick game throws. You can't live on three-step drop throws.
A lot of focus on the offense for the Bengals and how good that Joe Burrow has been, along with Jamar Chase, and the impact that he has made in year one. I'm curious what you see from Cincinnati's defense, though. A masterful performance in that second half to shut down the Kansas City Chiefs offense, and as good as Patrick Mahomes has been, there was nothing to speak of in that second half. What do you see from them?
Yeah, they made some adjustments in the second half, and I was surprised, to be honest with you, that it impacted the Chiefs as much as it did. But what they did in the first half, they played almost all zone, and they played with two split safeties. They came out in the third quarter, and they played more man, and they dropped Von Bell down in what we call a robber position, where he was about 12 yards from the line of scrimmage, right in the middle. And they did that because the Chiefs has some staple route concepts that particular coverage does a good job of taking away. And then at times they rushed three, and they dropped an eighth defender into coverage. I think you'll see the robbers somewhat in this game against the Rams. They won't do it as much because the Rams will obviously have seen all that and will be better prepared for it. But it does work against the Rams, because the Rams are really good at running what we call high-low concepts. And that high concept usually breaks right into the middle, where Von Bell would be if he's the robber. I think putting pressure on Stafford's really important. They're not a high percentage blitz team. They're a selective blitz team, but they've got some really nice concepts. Logan Wilson is a really intriguing player for them, the linebacker. And Sam Hubbard's interesting because Hubbard's a DN, but they stand him up at times behind the line of scrimmage, and they use him in different stunt concepts. So they're going to need to get pressure on Stafford, and I think there's ways for them to do that.
Talking with Greg Cosell from NFL Films. I want to flip the script here, go to the Rams' perspective of things. How impressed have you been with what Matthew Stafford has been able to accomplish in year one with Sean McVay, and the way that they have married what is his strength and also what Sean McVay wants to run on offense?
Yeah, well, Stafford's been a great player for a long time. He's an elite thrower of the football. McVay wanted Stafford because he can do more with his offense with Stafford than he could with Goff. And what they've done a lot of is no team has been in empty sets more than the Rams this year, because Stafford can run the drop back passing game. That was not Goff's strength. Goff needed the play action pass game. Stafford gives you the drop back pass game, so they were an empty far more. Plus, Stafford can work the entire field much better than Goff can. So I'm not the least bit surprised at what Stafford's done. Stafford's been a really good quarterback for a long time. You talk to any coach in the NFL, and Stafford is thought of extremely highly. You know, people just say, oh, well, he's never won a playoff game. I mean, you know, that doesn't speak to what the individual traits are. He's a high-level traits quarterback.
You know, Greg, just to shift away from the Super Bowl for a second, obviously you're connected in a strong way to two very significant NFL media personalities. The first being, obviously, you're the nephew of the late Howard Cosell, the all-time one of the greatest announcers in sports history, even going beyond football. You think about boxing, etc. And then obviously you knew Steve Sable, the great NFL Films president, who so much of what the Super Bowl is nowadays, so much of the history of the NFL was captured by him. I don't think any of us would look at the NFL the same way if it wasn't for Steve. So those are two guys who really shaped the game of football into what it is today, I think, from a media point of view. I was just wondering, having known both of them, is there a story, maybe just one of them or both of them, whatever, that you could share? Nothing, I don't know, too crazy, but just like, I don't know, something that would be interesting for us to hear as someone who knew them both so personally.
Well, you know, my uncle, it was a little different just because when he was big, I was, you know, it was in the 70s. I was in high school and college. So I didn't spend a lot of time with him at that point. Steve was really my mentor. In 1984, Steve basically came to me. I'd been at NFL Films for 5 years because I just finished my 42nd season at Films. Steve came to me in the summer of '84, spring or summer of '84, and basically said, you know, because you have to remember what the world was like then. ESPN had only been in existence for 5 years, and they, you know, they weren't a big-time sporting company yet, you know, as far as TV. And he said, you know, hey, I think I might have an idea, and you're the guy. You know, I'm just going to tell you the idea, and it's all on you. And it was the idea of a matchup show. And he basically handed it off to me, and at that point, you know, that was 1984, you know, we basically created the NFL matchup show. And we were the first to deal with X&O football. We've been on every single year since. You know, this is now 2022 coming up. So I've been, you know, I was the producer on that show until 5 years ago, and now I'm on the show as an analyst. You know, I remember Peter King telling me when I saw him at Eagles training camp a few years ago, right before the pandemic, he said, you know, do you realize that if it wasn't for you, you basically created a whole genre of how to talk about football? And I just said, Peter, I don't really think of it that way, but it's nice of you to say. But I mean, basically, you know, with the matchup show, that's what we did. Because back then, people said, "There's no one cares about football like that," and we were able to do a lot of trial and error, mess around a lot, probably make a lot of mistakes. I'm sure we did. Probably do a lot of shows that, if I look back now, I would think were awful. But you know, we persevered, and here we are.
Question that it's kind of a personal question, but like one of the shows on NFL Network that I've always really enjoyed that's really enlightening to me is the NFL Top 10 show, the hour-long show that you guys do where you do like top 10, you know, comebacks or like top 10, you know, I don't know, snake-bitten franchises is one I always remember as a Jet fan. I remember the Jets being on that list, obviously. And you've obviously contributed on the segments where they do the little interview pieces, etc.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, for someone like me, who's, you know, obviously like 22, I'm younger, like so much of what I learned about I love the history of the NFL, and so much of what I learned is through that show. Like I learned about like the Ice Bowl in that game, or learning about guys like Johnny Unitas or stuff like that, because like obviously I wasn't alive for them, and I'm too lazy to read a book, but I'll watch the show, and I hear about all these great guys like Sonny Jurgensen or Sammy Ball or stuff like that. Like, you were with NFL Films when the show was created. You've been on the show. Like, what was kind of I know this is like a niche question, but I'm just so curious. What was kind of the inspiration behind that program? And, you know, what do you enjoy about it?
I think the inspiration, quite honestly, is nothing amazing. I think the inspiration is that people like lists.
Yeah, that's true.
So you come up with different ideas for a list. It's just like I do a ton of draft work, and all people want to know is how do you rank guys? Because people want, you know, who's first, who's second, who's third. People like lists. So you play off the idea of people liking lists, and you do that. And that's what it is.
Do you have a favorite list that you've done? Do you remember any of those shows?
God. Because what they do with me, and obviously the pandemic changed everything, but what they would get me, they would literally, I would do the interview for 2 hours, and they'd ask me questions on, you know, 15 different shows.
Yeah.
So I can't even remember that.
Well,
and then some things I remember well and felt really comfortable talking about, and then other things I would have to say, I really don't remember that, you know. So, yeah, but no, it's people like lists.
I mean, I like lists. I love the show.
That's
so
the way it works.
stuff.
People love lists.
talking with Greg Cosell of NFL Films. I'm going to ask him who the number 1 pick in the draft is going to be. No, I'm just kidding.
No,
he hasn't gotten to that yet.
Well, I've watched 4 quarterbacks and 5 wideouts so far, but that's
Who
what
do you
I've
like
done.
out of the quarterback class then?
And I've watched a lot of these guys from previous years as well, because a lot of times in the summer, believe it or not, during my vacation, because I normally don't go anywhere, I'll just go in and watch guys, who are going to come out the next year.
Yeah.
So I'll watch their tape from the year before. I think that to me the top quarterback in the draft is Kenny Pickett. I think he's going to be the first quarterback chosen. Where that is, I couldn't tell you, but I think he's the best quarterback prospect in this draft class. But different teams have different priorities.
Yeah.
I mean, if you spoke to any team, any quarterback evaluator, they would probably all list the same traits. The question is, what value do they ascribe to those traits?
Mm-hmm.
And different coaches, different evaluators might ascribe different values. So someone could say, oh, I like this guy better because I like trait A and C, whereas another guy says, oh, I like this guy better because I like trait D and E. So it's and you have to remember, when coaches get involved, coaches think about how a quarterback fits into their offense. So while they're looking at general traits, because they obviously want guys with higher level traits than not, but they still think of how a guy fits into his offense. So it becomes scheme adaptability as well as just traits.
We mentioned the quarterbacks. There was a report, I think it was last week or something like that, from a bunch of anonymous NFL scouts saying something along the lines that they don't think, I don't know who these scouts were obviously, but they don't think that there's any real quality starting quarterbacks in this draft class. I'm guessing if you think Pickett's going to go the first round, you don't feel that way.
I think Pickett's a quality starting quarterback in the NFL. Then it comes down to team, and there's so many variables that involve team. Then it comes down to how he's coached. I can tell you for a fact he's wired right. I spoke to people who interviewed him at the Senior Bowl, and they said the kid is just phenomenal. So, Pickett will be a starter in the league. No one can sit here and say right now, well, will he be a top 5 player? No one knows that because there's too many variables.
Yeah.
But he'll be a starting quarterback in the NFL.
We're talking about rookies coming out and the quarterback class and all of that stuff. Curious what you see from the quarterbacks that are currently in the AFC in particular. You got so many good ones.
Yep.
Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, who's made his way to a Super Bowl. Is there somebody in the AFC that, when watching the film, really impressed you this season more so than maybe they're given credit for in the media?
Oh, I have to think of the AFC teams now. Because you obviously mentioned, you mentioned the obvious guys. I'm trying to think of the teams. Who's in the AFC? Well, we'll stick with your name since I can't go through all the teams in my head this quickly right now. Josh Allen's a fascinating case study because Josh Allen, and I actually do the Colin Cowherd show, and I remember doing the Cowherd show when Josh Allen still had a year remaining in Wyoming, and we talked about Josh Allen. And I had told Colin that he's a guy to watch. And, Josh came into the league as a kind of a wild stallion. Josh is 6'5", 240. He was obviously, he struggled with ball placement. He was all over the place, but there was something there. And I've been around Josh Allen. He is a big dude. I've stood right next to him when he's thrown it. It comes out of his hand differently. And he's a fascinating test case because his ball placement has dramatically improved. And most people would say you can't improve like that. That guys who are not necessarily accurate don't become accurate. But he's improved dramatically. And he's a little bit of a freak because of his size, his movement, the arm. His arm is ridiculous. But yet he can throw with some touch now. So he to me, I said last summer, and I said he's the most physically gifted quarterback in the NFL. And I said that's different from saying the best, although he may be working toward that. But I said last summer he was the most physically gifted quarterback in the league, and he is.
Well, it's funny that you say that because last night we were actually getting into a bit of debate about if Josh Allen was more gifted than Patrick Mahomes, which Nick and I were saying, and we were having a debate with some other people. But I think, Jack, you had a question. Right?
Yeah, this may be a tad bit selfish, but I'm just curious what you think Mac Jones' ceiling is. He showed a lot of progress as a rookie, but I think there are questions about what his potential really is. What do you see out of him in a few years from now?
Well, Mac Jones will never be Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes
Absolutely.
or Justin Herbert. He's just not gifted enough. So Mac Jones has some really good traits, though. Mac Jones is really good in the pocket, has a really good feel for the pocket. He's a lot better with people around him than some might think because he doesn't have to stride to throw it. He's very compact in his delivery, so he can make throws with people around him. He's very, very accurate. He's got a really refined sense of timing and anticipation. Mac Jones is your classic executor and ball distributor. That's what he is. So I think Mac Jones can be a really good quarterback. Again, what that means, I don't deal in numbers, whether is Mac Jones going to throw 45 touchdowns? Sure, he could. I mean, I guarantee that, early in Tom Brady's career, and I'm not comparing him to Brady, I'm just, making the point that early in Brady's career, I doubt anyone thought that from a statistical standpoint he would do what he did in his career. So much of Mac Jones, depends on other things at this point. His talent level. Talent is a relative term because physical gifts, like obviously Josh Allen. We can all see he's big. He's got a hose. He can run. You're not going to say that about Mac Jones, but that doesn't mean he can't be a good quarterback. So there's different ways to talk about good quarterbacks. I think Mac Jones will be a good player. Will he make the plays individually that win games by himself? That remains to be seen. Tom Brady did, and he did it without being able to run around. Normally quarterbacks like Mac Jones, they have to be great before the ball snapped. They have to win the down before the ball is snapped. Because if the structure of the play does not work, he's not going to make something happen. So those guys win like Brady. Brady wins before the ball snapped. Are there plays in games where he doesn't? Of course. So he throws it away. He doesn't get sacked very much, but he throws it away. But those guys have to win before the ball snapped.
Greg, we already talked about Josh Allen. We talked about Mac Jones. As a Jet fan, I would just really appreciate whether it's quick. I don't care.
Oh, boy.
We got to go around the table with the AFC East quarterbacks.
You want to talk about Zach Wilson?
I do want to talk about Zach Wilson. Whatever you want to
Be
say,
as short
I'm
as
all
possible,
ears.
Greg.
I don't care how much to say. Just your thoughts on Zach Wilson, however short or long as it needs to be.
Yeah, Zach Wilson's got a lot of talent. I mean, he's got a loose live arm. He's got light feet. He's athletic. I don't think he yet sees things very well. I don't think yet he understands what kinds of throws to make that are demanded on a given throw. He throws everything 100 miles an hour. He's a little bit of a trick shot artist. I think he's got to kind of settle down, see things, play within structure, play within rhythm. So I think he's got a ways to go. Whether he gets there remains to be seen. As you guys know, if you're history buffs in the NFL,
Yes.
When 5 quarterbacks are drafted in the top 15, not all 5 become stars.
Yep. As a Jet fan, I know that really well.
Yeah. So, Wilson's got, like I said, if you made a list of just traits, physical traits,
Yeah.
Wilson's got a lot of them. But that's not purely enough.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And he's got a ways to go. I mean, there were a few moments later in the season where I thought, okay, this is a better performance, and then the next week it looked like he was back being kind of, back in his wild stallion, days, as I mentioned with Josh Allen early in his career. But Zach Wilson has a little of that. I'm never a believer in calling a quarterback a bust after one season. I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
The NFL is really hard. It's really hard for quarterbacks. He's just going to have to kind of evolve his game so that it fits the NFL. The NFL game, it's not. He's got to play within structure, and all the trick shot throws that look cool at BYU. That doesn't make for a great NFL quarterback.
Yeah.
Greg Cosell, longtime member at NFL Films. We appreciate you taking some time with us here on Radio Row.
No problem, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Greg.
That was awesome.
It was great.
As a tough evaluation of Zach Wilson.
No, I thought that was great. I thought it was very insightful. I appreciate it. I want honesty.
That's what the tape shows. Greg's right, 100% right. But it's what I've been saying. So I'm glad that
I don't feel like
somebody a lot more
but I don't
official
feel
said
like
it than
I've
me.
necessarily been saying the opposite of that, though. I don't think I've said anything crazy. Like, I don't
No,
think
you haven't been crazy. I like the way that he put Mac Jones in his place too. It was good.
that I appreciated. And now Jack is like throwing back on the headset because he has to defend it.
He's one of those guys that's hard to say what he becomes because he won't become more talented. So he has to just become better at what his traits are, and then if he has enough team around him, can he be that guy? There's no saying he can. He's just not going to be, from a talent standpoint, you're not going to see him do what Josh Allen does or Patrick Mahomes does. You're not going to see that.
That's fair.
To me, it sounds like we won that argument from earlier.
Yeah, I think it does.
He had a good year, but toward the end of the year, he struggled a little bit.
Oh, who said that about an hour ago? I think that was me.
I didn't disagree with
He
that. I
struggled
mean,
a little bit toward the end
there
of
was
the year.
there was a little disagreement in that, but I do appreciate that.
But for a rookie quarterback who only started 17 games in college, he had a pretty good rookie season.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy started 17 games at Alabama.
Yeah. That's a fair evaluation.
Yeah. So, he did a little better than I thought he would. So we'll see. I mean, look, he's with a great coaching staff. Although I'm hearing, and I don't know if this will end up being true, that they're not going to hire an offensive coordinator.
Really?
Not Adam Gase? They're not bringing him in?
I mean, they could change all that. I mean, I'm hearing that Joe Judge will be involved in a lot of the offensive stuff.
That should terrify you.
Well, you shouldn't say that because you don't know the answer to
No,
that.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you don't know the
I like
answer
I like
to
the bus
that.
chops.
And Belichick was always involved.
Can you put the headset back on just so we can hear you?
Oh, we're
I mean, if he's leaving.
no, I'm not. We're not
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
for the air now.
Yeah, we're just. Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see how it works. But I mean, Belichick's always been involved in their offense, even when Brady was there. So we'll see. But Mac Jones will not be a bad player. The level of goodness, that remains to be seen. But he will not be a bad NFL quarterback.
Well, thank you very much, Greg.
Greg, we appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you for stopping by.
All right.
Here is one-on-one rolls on from Radio Row here at the Convention Center in Los Angeles. Always a great evaluation, guy who knows so much about the game and looks at as much film as anybody in the business. I mean, he watches as much as any coach you'll find in the NFL.
Well, I hope our
his,
listeners / watchers, whoever they are right now, I know Greg took his headset off. He did say some more good stuff after that. So hopefully, I mean, it was.
we caught it. We
got it.
Yeah,
all right, good,
of course.
excellent. All right, but yeah, look, I think.
Really, but see, we got to hit on this, quickly.
What? That we had a professional agree with us?
No offensive coordinator for the Patriots.
That
next year.
hey,
Joe Judge is going to run the offense.
That I mean. I know.
Wow.
Greg knows about 1 billion times more than I do. So he says.
To me, the first question that I ask if Joe Judge is going to be running the offense here, how does Mac Jones QB sneak?
Excellent point. Are we doing that on the inside their own 10? Are we doing a little quarterback sneak?
How is his quarterback sneak?
I hope he knew that this was a live stream.
I hope so. I don't know.
So we have breaking news here at WFUV 90.7 on a mic that was not on the head. We're revealing that the Patriots are not hiring an offensive coordinator.
Well, you got to turn the mic on. I mean, that was good stuff.
Hey, look, we had, between that and Doug Freeman telling us he was going to come to us with breaking major news.
We have really,
we've had some excellent guests today.
Yeah, 100%. I'm with you.
I think I have to say, obviously, look, I think. I have to be honest. I've been blown away by our guests today. I think we've had some excellent guests. I mean, obviously, look, we researched them. We knew about them beforehand. Obviously, a lot of these are impromptu guests too. So I think we all expected good things. But I have to be honest. Even though I had high expectations, I think a lot of them have gone above and beyond. I've been very happy with the interviews.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, Greg was awesome. Just to get his perspective on everything was outstanding, and his insights on the quarterbacks and the game too. I mean, I thought that was awesome.
Yeah,
and I think
great.
he's 100% right in just how are the Bengals going to attack this Rams defensive line. We knew that was going to be the matchup coming in, but what are the X's and O's that are going to go into Cincinnati, knowing that they're undermanned up front on the offensive line, trying to combat a really good pass rush of Aaron Donald and Von Miller up front for the Rams, that's going to be the outside zone, the play action off of it to try and get them moving laterally and not really getting up the field and trying to mitigate some of that really excellent pass rush that the Rams can throw at you. So it's a fascinating conversation, and was really glad that we were able to have it with Greg.
Yeah, I mean, I think Greg gave some great insight into the Super Bowl matchup. I think we got some great insight into the matchups from, I think Marcus McNeill and Nick Mangold had some good insights about, offensive line play versus the defensive pass rush, I think, and I got to say, what I really appreciated about Greg was, look, he knows so much about the game, and obviously, look, he was telling us a little bit about the quarterback class incoming. I appreciated all of his thoughts on all the quarterbacks that we feel are relevant to us personally. Yeah, great stuff. I think his evaluation of Zach Wilson, I mean, I think it's always...
You can't be happy with that.
No, but I don't. I mean, Nick, be the objective third party here. Like, have I said anything that was that wildly different than what Greg said?
No, I think you were a little bit more
optimistic maybe, but I don't like. I
Zach
think
Wilson
I think I think my tone was more optimistic. But essentially, what Greg was saying was he's got a high ceiling, a lot of talent, and can he capitalize on that?
Well,
and
I mean,
think
he called him a trick shot artist.
I mean, like that's like a slight, but like at the end of the day, I don't really feel that. If anyone should be feel like that their opinion was squashed, I think it's the guy saying.
Yeah, I was upset about that.
Because
however, listen, whatever he just said, you could have taken out Zach Wilson and replaced that with Sam Darnold, and the narrative would not have changed.
Oh wow!
Wait.
I don't know how Sam Darnold came into any of this, but
what?
that's
I don't
tough.
understand.
I'm just saying that the story
What are
goes
you
on
saying?
and on and on.
Wait, are you saying that his evaluation of Sam Darnold is the same? Are you saying if we evaluated Sam Darnold after year one with Greg, he would have said the same thing? Is that what you're saying? Why? Okay, I mean, I don't think Sam Darnold was ever a trick shot artist with high athletic ability.
All right, maybe with the exception of that comment.
I don't think
Sam Darnold just wasn't good.
Sam Darnold just, I mean, look, it took me a long time to realize that, but he's flat out bad. I mean, I don't really think, and I don't think him and Zach Wilson. Look, Zach Wilson can also very much be a bust, but I don't think Zach Wilson
probably will be.
What I mean, whatever. Again, I don't want to get in the weeds. I'm trying to be positive. This is a happy trip. It's like 80 degrees outside. I'm thrilled to be out here. I just don't think. Look, every Jet quarterback is. I mean. Every Jet quarterback since Joe Namath, and you want to do the stupid Hall of Fame debate, that's fine. The simple fact is he won the Super Bowl. Every quarterback drafted since has been a quote-unquote bust because they never won the Super Bowl. So, I mean, is it possible that, Zach Wilson's going to be a bust too? Yeah, sure. But, I think to compare Zach to Sam Darnold is, absurd. I just don't think they're at all the same quarterback. I don't think they have really any similarities. I think the biggest difference between the two of them, which gives me more hope for Zach, is that I found Darnold was very reserved, and I thought he was very professional, but he was not a rah-rah team leader, which is what you need from a quarterback when you look at a Tom Brady or, I don't know who else we want to talk about. I mean, I think Josh Allen does it to a degree. Just like the field general, the guy that's going up and down the sideline saying, hey, we got this. And I think Zach Wilson, whether or not he's, going to capitalize on his talent is one thing, but I think his mentality and his personality, I mean, you hear it, and obviously, unfortunately, we don't have any of these guests on our show, but Michael Carter, Jets running back, was out here this week. He did a spot with Good Morning Football, Jets rookie running back, who also had a great season. Not also had a great season. There were some Jets rookies. I mean, everyone was talking about Zach Wilson. Some really good Jets rookies this year. That's besides the point. The point is, a lot of Jets players in that locker room speak very highly of Zach's leadership ability. So putting his talent and the potential, can he be a great quarterback aside, I like where his head is on his shoulders. He was a captain year one, which Max Jones was not. So.
We're getting into captains now.
I'm just busting your chops. I'm sorry.
Well.
I mean, Jack. Wow. I mean, it's sports. I mean, we're busting your chops all day. Trust me, I'm busting your chops all day, and I'm not making any apologies about it. I hate the Patriots. I hate Bill Belichick. Mac Jones, I don't know long enough to hate him. He hasn't done anything to me yet. But if Zach Wilson didn't have the worst game of his season, we could have probably won that first matchup this year. But what are you going to do?
Hasn't done anything yet. Just about a half an hour left here on One from Radio Row, the Los Angeles Convention Center, in the shadow of Crypto.com Arena here in downtown LA. So happy you could stick with us throughout this afternoon. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll be back Saturday as our coverage continues here from Los Angeles over Super Bowl week. Nick DeLuca, Mike Leegan, Jack Roche, and Mike Messina here with you. And guys, maybe we want to get back to some of the Super Bowl talk here and just getting through some previews of the game and what we're expecting. We touched on that a little bit. We've strayed with AFC East and all of the things that are happening in the AFC. But just in looking at this matchup, and we hit on this at the beginning of the show, what are some of the things that you're looking forward to? And we talked about a couple of matchups, but what we didn't really talk about was some of the coaching aspect of it. And, Zach Taylor getting another opportunity to coach here in year 3 with the Bengals, and it paying out wildly with the way that there was some calling for his job after the first couple of years. And Sean McVay, a guy who by all accounts has been outstanding in Los Angeles with the Rams and was able to get Jared Goff to a Super Bowl. Now he gets, as Greg mentioned when he was with us, a quarterback who he feels like is more capable of running the offense the way that he wants to run it. Two guys that really know each other very well. You've got Andrew Whitworth, the former longtime Cincinnati Bengal, making his way out to L.A. and getting a chance to play against the Bengals in all of those storylines as well, just the connections between these two teams.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think with the NFL, we're in Hollywood, and I think what happens with the Super Bowl is you get these Hollywood-type storylines, these, sports is – the reason why there's so many sports movies is because oftentimes sports is cinematic, and I think the Super Bowl is a perfect example of that. I mean, look at Super Bowl history. There have been always these great storylines in the matchups, whether you want to talk about, a few years ago when we had the Harbaugh brothers going up against each other, or you would talk about, Peyton Manning finally getting to the Super Bowl and winning the big one against the Bears, or the Eli Brady rematch, all that kind of stuff. There's always a great storyline. I would say for me, something that I'm really interested in storyline-wise, and Nick kind of already touched on it, is just this idea that Zach Taylor, look, the reason he got the Bengals head coaching job to begin with is because he was the quarterback's coach for Sean McVay. He was the pupil. And now as Darth Vader said to Obi-Wan Kenobi in Star Wars, what I left you, I was but to learn. Now I am the master. I know I'm going to nerd out on you people, but I don't really care. The point is, I'm kind of interested to see on that dynamic. And, also what I'm interested to think about is this. Think back to that Super Bowl a few years ago, 2018 season, the Patriots versus the Rams. Sean McVay, by all accounts, did not have a good coaching job that day. Now, look, Jared Goff was terrible in that game. I think a lot of the failures offensively, he hits Brandon Cooks in the end zone, the Rams win that game. So I think, I'm not going to blame the loss all on Sean McVay. But my question is, look, the guy, he's still like one of, if not the youngest head coach in the league.
Still the youngest.
Still the youngest. Has he learned from that experience? He didn't have a good game. He had some blunders in the playoffs. He didn't coach very well against the 49ers with the whole challenge situation. And I don't know.
That was the interesting thing for me, and that's where I was going to go with what you're talking about. And I don't know, maybe it's just a Kyle Shanahan thing, a guy who he really has not had almost any success against.
That was the first time I ever beat him.
First time he beat him. But I'm just fascinated by this Sean McVay and big games thing because,
he's the new Andy Reid.
A lot of times we talk about players handling the moment and handling the big-time game. And the quarterback, if he looks nervous or, this wide receiver wasn't ready to make that play or make that catch. But Sean McVay, you 100% hit on it. I thought he got out-coached, and he just looked like he was out of control. Some of the challenges, the second challenge that he threw down was ridiculous.
Yeah.
It was like there is
poor management with timeouts.
There is no chance that you are ever winning this challenge. I see that sitting on my couch in New York.
Yeah,
Why
I saw
can't
it.
you see that you're on the sideline? That video board at SoFi is pretty darn good. It gives you a pretty good image of that. So it's just all of these things, and another storyline there. Can Zach Taylor get into his mind a little bit and really
with
fluster
Zach Taylor?
him? I'm curious.
This is a guy in Zach Taylor. There were rumors this guy was on the hot seat that he was going to get fired, and then the Bengals come out this year, they win the division, they make the playoffs, they have these miraculous underdog wins against the Titans and the Chiefs. I don't think a lot of people weren't really liking them in the Titans game, and then I don't think anyone really saw what happened in the Chiefs game, especially after the way that game started with the offensive possessions. It was looking like 21-3. It was going to be another blowout. So, look, I'm wondering what we're going to see with Zach Taylor. Maybe that gives McVay, I'm not going to say an advantage, but maybe it helps calm him down a little bit. The idea that, hey, I'm not going up against Belichick in the Super Bowl. It's a guy who actually coached for me first time. I'm just really wondering, can he learn from that experience the first go-around? My other question is this. What about Matthew Stafford? You mentioned there's always the emphasis on the player in the big game. Going back to that player in the big game, Matthew Stafford, a guy who spent his entire career with the Lions, never had a chance to play in a big game, really. He made the playoffs, once. It wasn't really that great. He's back now with the Rams. Look, I think he played well against the Buccaneers. Obviously, he led that victory. In overtime, they had it was fourth quarter overtime. It was a fourth quarter. It was fourth quarter. Yeah. There were so many overtime fourth quarter games in the playoffs. I forgot which was which. Well, the point is, Stafford, I haven't been like blown away by the way that he's played. I don't think he had an amazing game against the 49ers. I'm just curious now that he's finally in the big game, is there going to be pressure on his shoulders? And there is going to be. And the question is, can he handle that pressure? Because for so long, the narrative always was, Matthew Stafford is so talented. He just needs to get out of Detroit and get to a competent team. Well, you know what? He's out of Detroit. He's got tons of playmakers around him. And now the question is, can he finally seal the deal? I personally, if I had to pick two of these quarterbacks, I get he's only in year 2. I got to go with Joe Burrow in this game. Look, Stafford has had more success over a longer period of time. He's a seasoned veteran. I'm sorry, Joe Burrow, everyone jokes, the memes and everything. The guy does have ice in his veins. I mean, this is a guy he's been ready for this moment since college.
Yeah.
You think about the national championship game, he is an ice-cold killer. Look, I'm going out on a limb. I honestly don't really see, and I know I jinx everything, so this is now going to happen, but I just don't really see him being fazed by the moment. I just don't. He seems built differently. He's the type of guy, I was talking about Zach Wilson, where I like to see the mentality. I think Joe Burrow has a fantastic mentality, especially for a guy, year 2 player. And he acts like he's, a 12-year vet.
Yeah, for sure. He exudes the confidence, and he's somebody who has been so incredibly successful in such a short amount of time. And in particular, missing most of year 1 with the torn ACL. I mean, most of half, whatever it was. I mean, that's a significant injury to come off of, especially when you're trying to develop. I mean, you forget how young, and Joe Burrow is perhaps a little bit older because of his path throughout college.
Yeah.
So it's not as quite a young player, but still, we see how long did it take Josh Allen to get things going, and even Patrick Mahomes sat year 1
entire year,
and he was able to come back and really explode onto the scene. But it's so impressive what he's doing, and even Mahomes, right? We talk about him as a case study. I mean, man, what a situation he walked into. I mean, Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce and Andy Reid, who is as good a coach of offense as anybody in the NFL. And Joe Burrow walks in with this downtrodden organization that has been in an abyss for years upon years and trying to figure out how the heck do we move forward. And then he shows some promise in years 1 and then tears his dang ACL. And you're like, okay, here we are all over again. And what does this team look like? And my goodness, the way that he has just transformed this entire organization has been incredibly impressive, and I'm amazed and blown away by what he and this entire team have done. And I also think that their defense doesn't get enough credit. I mean, I mentioned this to Greg, but what a job they did
in the second
on Patrick
half.
Mahomes in that second half. And
Fantastic.
Lou Anarumo, who is their defensive coordinator, the guy who's the head coach of the defense. Zach Taylor is calling plays offensively.
Yep.
And, I mean, it's just so impressive what they were able to accomplish. And that, to me, is another fascinating element of this. And we'll detail this, of course, throughout the entire week as we're here on Radio Row finishing up on Saturday. But what does the matchup look like? And you alluded to it a little bit with just the mentioning of the matchup between Eli Apple and Odell Beckham Jr. But what does it look like for this entire Bengals defense? Because I don't think there are terribly high expectations. I don't think people coming into this season, and in particular when matching them up with other playoff teams, were saying, wow, this is such an incredibly gifted Bengals defense, and yet they had the best defensive performance of anybody in a half in the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think those are some – I mean, when we think about the Kansas City Chiefs, I mean, I think this was a team, especially with Mahomes' first full season, I think everyone looked at them as this offensive juggernaut that simply couldn't be beat. And, look, I get we go back to that AFC Championship game in 2018 where, the 2018 season where, the Patriots ultimately prevailed, but I don't think it was because the Chiefs got stopped. It's because,
because they lost the coin toss.
I mean, that's not really going why. I was going to go more lined up in the neutral zone kind of deal. But the point is, whether it's that season and they win the Super Bowl the next year, it wasn't until that Bucs team last year where for the first time in Mahomes' tenure as the starting quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs, I'm no Todd Bowles fan, as you know, but that was the first time where I had seen a defense actually shut down the Kansas City Chiefs. I had never really seen it before. You want to talk about days where the Chiefs were maybe off, whatever. They always would find a way to rally, and boom, they start clicking again. First time I ever saw a game where the Chiefs just looked befuddled. And I get, they had a bad offensive line at that point, completely revamped. But, then we go fast forward to this 2021 season. And the Chiefs, they did start off slow. They weren't really the same Chiefs. I think they might have still been reeling from that Super Bowl loss, to be honest. They finally hit their stride. They quietly amassed one of the best records in the NFL, number 2 seed in the AFC. They take care of business in a shootout against the Bills. I mean, that's what it was. And if there's any indictment on the Chiefs in that game, it's defensively, not offensively. The offense was humming. And then for the second time, you saw a team shut them down, and this time it was the Cincinnati Bengals. Because you go back to that regular season game when the Bengals won, that wasn't really a defensive shutdown. That was, again, more of a shootout, high-scoring game. The Bengals, it's that Bucs team last year in the Super Bowl, and this Bengals team was the second time, that I saw a defense take care of the Kansas City Chiefs. So I'll be interested to see what they do in this game against L.A. That gives me a lot of hope for this game, to be honest. But something else that I want to talk about is this. I want to talk about a little bit. You want to talk about a storyline? Let's talk about these two franchises and the history of these franchises. You look at I was going to call them the St. Louis Rams, the Los Angeles Rams. It's weird when someone says the Rams. I usually, my initial reaction is, a team that's moved around a couple times in my lifetime. I never like to think of them as like a true contender. The simple fact is the Rams as an organization have played in 5 Super Bowls. They've won one, which was the Kurt Warner Greatest Show on Turf. Yep. They obviously lost another one with Warner in St. Louis. This is their third playing in L.A. They lost in '79 to the Steelers back when the Steel Curtain, all that, in the original L.A. tenure. And then obviously they've been now to 2 with McVay. And obviously, look, you just have one win there. But usually when you think of the great NFL franchises, I don't usually think of the Rams. But I get they've only won the one. But you got to give them some credit. It is hard to get to the Super Bowl and to be a team that's gone to 5 Super Bowls in the history of your franchise, despite the fact that you moved around in L.A., St. Louis, back to L.A. Props to them. And then look at the Bengals. The Bengals are one of the most, they're a team born out of the ashes of the Cleveland Browns. Paul Brown gets fired by his namesake organization. He starts the Bengals in Ohio, Cincinnati. I'm sorry, I'm distracted. The Pat McAfee show is to our right. Some crazy shenanigans going on over there. Anyway, the Bengals, and you mentioned it before. This is a team, and I know they made the playoffs a lot with Marvin Lewis. They never won a playoff game. They would never win. They had never won a road playoff game in the history of their franchise. This was a team, and let's be really honest, and I get the Marvin Lewis playoff appearances. This is a team that really hadn't had true success in about 30 years, and in 35 years since Boomer Esiason was the quarterback.
Hadn't won since the 80s.
Yeah, so for a team, to me, it finally feels that the Bengals for the first time since the 80s, the first time in my lifetime, they've turned it around. So to me, it's just interesting to look at the history of these two franchises. And I said it to Greg when he was on. I'm an NFL history junkie. I just find it interesting. But to me, when I talk about storylines of the Super Bowl, I just kind of I like to look at these two franchises, the history of them, and just kind of like what the Super Bowl means to them. I think it's just two teams that, they've had a lot happen to them in their history, and let's see what happens on Sunday.
Yeah, it should be fascinating, and I'm really looking forward to seeing this one and getting a chance to sit down and watch it. And I'm curious. I was fascinated by something that Greg brought up too, just in the X's and O's of the whole thing, and how bringing down that safety, because there's been so much made about playing these top flight quarterbacks, whether it be Mahomes, Allen, Herbert, and forcing them to try and play underneath. You want to play 2 high safeties and then make sure that all the throws are underneath and not allowing them the big shot and the ability to make the huge play. But that's not exactly what Lou Anarumo did. I mean, he was bringing a safety down to play that, intermediate route game, and that's somewhere where the Chiefs have been really good, and it's the run after catch, and somebody in the middle of that defense, Von Bell, a guy who is so important for them to kind of take that away. And it's really similar to some of the things that the Rams try and attack you with. I mean, they are much more vertical with Odell Beckham Jr., but Cooper Kupp is a guy who's going to run a lot of crossers. It's a similar offense that you are playing. Of course, it's a different quarterback. Not trying to compare Matthew Stafford to being on the level of a Patrick Mahomes, certainly talent-wise, but a lot of those same principles come because the Rams can't get anything going.
And I said it a few minutes ago, Nick, and I think you brought it up again. I just think I was so impressed by this Bengals defense, the fact that they shut down the Chiefs' offense. It makes me believe. I mean, I don't think there's one opponent they don't have the possibility to shut down. And, on paper, I don't necessarily think that the Bengals are like this all-time great defense or one of the top defenses in the league, personally. But, just that Chiefs performance was very eye-opening. I mean, look, let's give them credit for the Titans' performance, too. The Titans aren't exactly schlubs on offense. They're not like all-time world beaters. But, I think that it just with that, I trust Joe Burrow. They got playmakers on offense. We'll see about the offensive line. That is obviously a very big concern. Games are won and lost in the trenches, so that could be where the game was lost for Cincinnati. But, I would say before that Chiefs game, I never thought the Bengals would make it to the Super Bowl. And let's say even in a crazy world, I thought they would. I would have thought it would be a shootout win, and I wouldn't give the Bengals defense a chance against this Rams offense. But given that second half performance, and look, I don't think you can keep the Rams down forever. I mean, maybe you can. I mean, Belichick essentially did it in 2018, obviously with
Different
Jared
quarterback,
Goff,
yeah.
Jared Goff, a quarterback, which is very different. But I just think that we're in store for a great Super Bowl matchup. And again, what I also love about this variety. We are finally getting a Super Bowl matchup. First of all, we've never had before. And it's two teams that look, I said it with the Rams, who quietly have been to the Super Bowl a lot. But, we said the Bengals haven't been to the Super Bowl since the 80s when they played the 49ers. And we've just been inundated with and I know Jack probably loved it, but I'm sorry. I was sick of seeing Tom Brady in the Super Bowl all the time. It's, I don't care. Like, I'm sick of seeing him in there. He's the greatest quarterback. And for once in a while, I like some variety. And I'm glad to see we don't have Peyton Manning or Brady. We don't have the 49ers. We don't have the Steelers. No, it's Rams-Bengals, which might not be the sexiest matchup, but I think it's going to be a game, and I'm excited.
I think it's going to be fun. So I'm certainly looking forward to it, and it's good to have that variety. Good to have a couple of different teams in here and fresh faces to try and root for, as opposed to the old guard and a lot of the same teams there. And I'm interested to see how this thing plays out because they're not two teams that you see all that often. It's a different matchup and should be good, and a couple of teams with a lot of familiarity with them. And we'll get Jack Roach's input here as he comes back on here. But is there something that you're looking forward to? We touched on it a little bit with the individual matchup, but something else you're looking for?
I just want to kind of second what Mike just said, and I know, surprise, surprise, but I actually do see this as a breath of fresh air because you've got Stafford. I mean, that's right there. That's something that I'm really excited for. Seeing Matt Stafford in a Super Bowl. He made the playoffs 3 times with the Lions, lost all 3.
Yeah. And
now he's already played more playoff games with the Rams in one season. He deserves to be here. He's an all-time great. Maybe not Tom Brady, but at the same time, then you've got the young buck Joe Burrow, right? He comes off an ACL injury, wins 4 games as a rookie, and now he's in the Super Bowl. I'm excited to see it. I know we're saying a lot of the same things, but it's the truth. It's the rookie versus the vet. And they're both here for the first time on this stage. And I don't know. I'm not upset about the Patriots not being in it because it's new. It's exciting. These are two teams that I want to see.
I appreciate you saying you're looking for the variety, Jack, but you can't lie. Come on, everyone wants to see their favorite team in the Super Bowl. It doesn't matter how many times.
Yeah, I don't know how much I believe that.
Well,
you don't
not to say that
you
I
want
don't.
your team in the Super Bowl.
No. I obviously, if it was my choice,
I appreciate you being objective about it.
I'm just saying it's nice to have some. And when I heard you say that, my first thought was, well, what about LeBron James? You get upset seeing LeBron James play, and maybe that's a bad example because you're a LeBron guy, right?
I am, yeah.
But you look at the league now, and you've got the Bucks. And you've got the Suns and Devin, but it's like you actually have parity,
Yeah.
So seeing something different in football, I think is good.
It is, but we were talking about this, and I don't know if you had jumped out.
might have
but
been walking around.
the way that the NFL has almost become, in some ways, the NBA, right? Like the way that you need this star-level quarterback, that talent there, and obviously in the NBA you need more than that. You probably need 2 stars to really be that top-flight contender. But unless you've got that guy, you're not going to compete. You're not going to be able to win those types of games. And we can debate whether Mac Jones will be that guy later, but I'm saying for this year, the Patriots didn't have that, and they really had no chance. The Steelers didn't have that, and they were a complete mismatch when they took on Kansas City in the first round. How did the Eagles look going into Tampa Bay? Because Jalen Hurts isn't ready to go yet. I mean, these types of teams that when you walk in, even Dak Prescott, right? Dak, there are question marks about how good this guy is at $40+ million a year, and they go in, they get bounced in the first round by a really well put together team.
I think
it's so apparent to me that you need that type of guy if that's what your team's going to center around. I mean, San Francisco is built a little bit differently and even they realize it. They know that they got to get better at the position, and that's why they're moving off to try and bring in Trey Lance and see if that can elevate them to different heights. And I think they probably, if you ask Kyle Shanahan and you ask John Lynch, they're probably a little surprised about how well they played this year. Like they were a couple of plays in the second half away from being in the Super Bowl again. I don't know that they
With
really
Jimmy
expected
Garoppolo
that.
at quarterback.
And they were proven once again why this needs to happen. This transition needs to happen. But it shows you that you need these types of guys. It's so apparent.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Nick, you just mentioned it. And I said it earlier in the show, and I say it a lot. I'm really someone who really believes at the end of the day, it's the players that matter more. I think, it's the players on the field. They're the ones that end up executing. There's not a great coach that didn't have a great quarterback, to lead them to those championships. So I do think there's always a slight edge to the players. That being said, the NFL, more so than any other league, or football, more so than any other sport, coaching has a gigantic impact. I mean, baseball, you change a manager out. I mean, that's going to get you maybe like 5 or 10, maybe 15 more wins, but it's not going to be a huge difference in the end, especially the way baseball is now. But I digress. The point is, in football, you get the right head coach in there, you can change things instantly.
Yeah.
And, you mentioned Dak Prescott. To see the guy. To me, that loss in the playoffs this year against the 49ers, and look, I get that Dak wasn't great, and I don't think the Cowboys were great, but they had a lot of penalties, all that. But the penalties and
I know where you're going with this, and I agree with you.
the penalties and some of the other issues, the discipline issues, that falls on coaching, and decision-making falls on coaching. And to me, the reason the thing that held the Cowboys back so much this year, was Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy, and I was someone who actually wanted Mike McCarthy to coach the Jets. I was someone who was
That's why
I
he's
was
so
very
bad.
wrong. I was very wrong about that. And, I guess it's a miracle that Aaron Rodgers ever won a Super Bowl with that guy. He is just not a good head coach. I don't know how he's still the head coach down there. He's obviously not been fired. He's going to have another year at least, and I think maybe Sean Payton will finally be brought in. But, I think what I'm getting at here is I bring up the Cowboys and McCarthy and all that. Even though, like I said, I think players matter more. Coaching is so important, and Nick and I, we mentioned this earlier. I'm just very interested to see Zach Taylor and Sean McVay, two very young coaches, and I get Sean McVay has already coached the Super Bowl, but I just don't necessarily know what to expect out of these guys in the game. And, to me, when you have two young coaches who I know Zach Taylor definitely could, and I don't care about the experience. I think Sean McVay still could as well. I think I have a bad feeling, well, not a bad feeling because I don't really care what the outcome is, but I have a feeling that we're going to see maybe some suspect coaching decisions that could usually it's what happens, but could have an impact on the game. I know it's a general vague statement, but I don't know. To me, I see when you have two young coaches the way we do in this matchup, I think you're going to see how coaching does matter.
I'm with you. No, and I'm fascinated to see what ends up happening, too. And guys who are certainly young, and Zach Taylor obviously does not have any experience in a game of this magnitude as a head coach, as the primary decision maker. And Sean McVay has got his second go-round. Of course, the first one, as we've detailed, did not go very well at all. I mean, he was outclassed by Bill Belichick and by that Patriot operation, and still looked uncomfortable throughout this playoff run. So, interested to see what we get from him. And it's always there's so much talk about the players. There's always the talk about the players, but I feel like there's less attention being paid to the coaching staffs, and that's always so important because, as you rightly point out, Mike, the impact that coaching can have on organizations and can have on the ability for teams to compete and turn things around, and what Zach Taylor has meant for these types of groups going on for Joe Burrow and for the Cincinnati Bengals. You really appreciate what he has been able to do to help turn this program around, and we're going to see if he can do it one more time here in the Super Bowl and lead Cincinnati to a championship. And Joe Burrow has been a guy who's just benefited so much from it, and we'll see if Taylor's impact can lead him all the way to a Super Bowl. We're going to have some movement here. Always some guests here at Radio Row.
We are joined now by women's Bantamweight champion Julianna Peña, coming off a huge fight against possibly the best pound-for-pound fighter in the UFC, Amanda Nunes. Julianna, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you guys for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here with you guys.
So I want to start from the top. You came out of that fight plus 650 underdog. What was your mindset going into that fight, thinking you have a chance to become champion, you can beat the best women's fighter in the world?
I was just focusing on myself. I don't pay attention too much to the odds. That's not my gambit. I will say that the amount of work that I had put in, the mat time, gave me supreme confidence that come hell or high water, I was walking away with this belt.
I'm curious, you hear stuff coming from Amanda Nunes saying that injuries had something to do with this fight, and I'm sure that you're refuting that. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are, everybody's going to say whatever they have to do to get themselves up and to make themselves feel better, Amanda said that, her knee injuries were an issue for the fight, but how did that even play into the fight at all? I wasn't kicking her. She was kicking me. You know what I mean? If knees were an issue, then why are you kicking me so much, And the other thing is okay, so they miraculously recovered within 1 month. You know what I mean? Now, back then it was horrible, but now they're good. You know what I mean? It's all so confusing. I don't understand, but you're going to say whatever you have to say to pump yourself up. So of course I'm expecting excuses.
Did you think it was going to be that dominant of a performance by you? In the first round, she could have gone out by your strikes. You outstrike her completely. Did you think it was going to be that easy for you, or not easy, but that competitive?
Well, no, I literally, when it was all done, I was like, wow, that was easier than I thought it was going to be. So I wasn't expecting it to be as easy as it was, but I was ready for war no matter what, and I had prepared myself for that for the last 9 months leading up to the fight. So I was just ready to go. If you would have put Terminator in front of me, I would have killed him. So it didn't matter who they put across from me. I was ready to go.
Did you think it was going to get out of the first round during the fight, or what was your mindset during the fight?
Yes, absolutely. I was expecting to go 5 rounds, and I prepared to go 5 rounds. So I absolutely thought that it was going to, go past the first round. Absolutely.
I can see that you've brought some hardware, for this interview. And I guess earlier in your career, is this something that you realized, something you envisioned further along, sitting here now holding that across your shoulder?
Absolutely. When Dana White opened up the doors for women into the UFC, I said, I want to be a UFC world champion. And so it's such a, I don't want to say feather in my cap or pat on the back, but I just feel like a sense of justification, like, you did it, old gal. You are who you say you are. You're not this fraud. You're not this delusional person that thinks that they're going to be a world, everyone says, I'm going to be a world champion, but when to actually do it, now no one can take that away from me, and I am who I say I am.
I want to go back to your last 3 fights. You lost to Randame, you beat Sarah McMahon, and then you obviously beat Amanda Nunes. You lost the first one by submission, you won the next 2 by rear naked choke as well. Do you think people overlook your striking as well? Do you think Amanda overlooked your striking?
I definitely think so, but if you go back to the fights with Valentina Shevchenko, if you go back and watch the fights with Jermaine Duraniman, I'm beating them. I'm outstriking these strikers that are supposed to be the best strikers in the world. I'm outstriking them at their own game. I definitely think that people underestimate me. They don't want to give me that credit, but now they have no choice. I am a threat on the feet. I am a threat on the ground. I'm a threat in wrestling, on the cage, on jiu-jitsu, everywhere. I'm comfortable wherever the fight goes, and if you don't take me seriously, you should.
What was it like getting back in the gym after that loss to Randame? How do you have that motivation to keep fighting, to keep going, and to really just be the champ now?
I accredit that to my striking coach, Wayne Gregory. He literally said, you have to stay active. You have to take another fight right away. So after that fight with Jermaine, I went right back into another camp, and I got ready a month later to go fight Sarah McMahon. And so staying active, I think, is the one thing that I think helped me get to that spot where I was going to be fighting for the title after that.
We're here after quite possibly the biggest match of your career. What is next for the Venezuelan Vixen?
Okay, so next for me is there's still naysayers. There's still people that think it was a fluke. There's still people that think that I just accidentally fell into this gold belt, and I'm here to tell you that it wasn't a fluke, but if you think that it was, we can run it back. Next week, next month, tomorrow, whenever you want, we can run it back. My job is to get more eyes on the sport and to get more people involved in the UFC and in MMA. And I'm going to do that by coaching this next season of The Ultimate Fighter. We've been filming for 2 days. Tomorrow's day 3, and I'm so excited to give back to where it all started for me and to finally have things coming full circle. I started on The Ultimate Fighter. Now I'm coaching The Ultimate Fighter, and to have that buildup of Ultimate Fighter coming out, leading up into that rematch, I think is the best possible scenario for me, and that is what's happening with us.
First woman to win the Ultimate Fighting Championship as well, let me add to that. And I'm sure we're going to see you and Amanda go at it again. I wanted to ask you about training camp. How many months before your fight do you get back in the gym and start really training hard for the fight instead of just 1 time a day, maybe a couple times a week?
Yeah, so I go from training 3 times a day to maybe like once a day, and not once a day, 6 days a week. It's maybe like I'm training 3 or 4 days a week instead of 3 times a day every single day except Sundays. So I've definitely scaled it back a little bit, especially with all the media obligations and it was the holidays right after I won, and then it was the New Year's, and there was tons of media obligations in January. Now we're going into February, going right into that Ultimate Fighter thing. But I'm still training. I'm training with my team. I'm getting on the mats with my team. I'm not going to ask them to do anything that I wouldn't require of myself, and that means getting my hands dirty and getting on the mats just as much as they are. Yesterday was day 1 of us first training session together, and I'm bleeding. I got cuts on my feet. I'm out there grinding with my team just as much as I would if I was actually a contestant on the show, and I think that is what's going to lead to the success of this next rematch.
Last question for me. I don't know if you've got any more, but what's it like, I guess just from the perspective of being a role model, an ambassador for the sport as a female in the past predominantly male-dominated sport?
Yes, so that's a great question. I don't want to put myself in a box or try to categorize myself for just a role model for women or just a role model for mothers. I want to be able to be that voice to other people. I want people to set realistic expectations for themselves, but with that being said, go out there and get what you want. If you're truly passionate about something, if you're dedicated, if you put that mat time in, whether it looks like mat time on the jiu-jitsu mats or mat time in whatever your profession is or whatever your passion is, pursue that with your whole heart, and do not be deterred if somebody says no or if somebody denies you. You cannot have a whiny baby type of mentality. This sport especially is not for the weak, and when one door closes, 3 more are going to open. You have to have a dog mentality and a never give up type of attitude, and when you have that attitude of persevering and fighting against adversity and overcoming those odds, that's what's going to give you that confidence, and that's what's going to make you say, I can hang with the best in the world. I am the best in the world, and I'm not going to stop, and I'm never going to give up no matter what.
What makes you motivated enough to face that adversity that you face during a fight, whether you're bleeding, whether you're injured or ribs in training camp? What gives you that motivation to keep going out in the cage fighting while you're even injured still?
It's the fact that I've been doing this for a long time, and it's the fact that I've stepped in there with the best of the best. I've been in there with world champion after world champion after world champion, and when you have the tough road that I've had, it gives you the confidence to know that you can literally hang with anybody that steps across the octagon from you. And fighting in general, or even just training jiu-jitsu, that's what it shows you. It shows you that you can fight out of tough positions, and when you're in tough positions, to remain calm and fight your way out and find your way out. You have to put yourself in uncomfortable positions in order to succeed and in order to see what you're really made of. And I think that that's the one thing that jiu-jitsu has taught me is you can overcome those odds by putting yourself in those uncomfortable positions and fighting your way out.
Julianna Peña, thank you so much for coming on. The future of women's fighting right here, the Bantamweight champion of the world. It was a pleasure to speak to you.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate the time.
Thank you. That was awesome. Julianna Peña, UFC Women's Bantamweight Champion, as we wrap up here on One from the Los Angeles Convention Center. Guys getting a photo op here, so we got to make sure that we've got all that handled before we close out here on One. So many outstanding guests that we had an opportunity to speak with today. Nick Mangold, Doug Freeman, Marcus McNeill, Leigh Steinberg, Marcus Capone of SEAL Team 6, Greg Cosell, Julianna Peña, the UFC Women's Bantamweight Champion. Appreciate all of them coming on. Mike's got a pose with the championship belt, too, off to our right. Make sure that he's all set. Got his photo op. Just about set here as he's got that one. I just got to make sure that I get my final thoughts from a quality day one here before we head out.
Well, my day peaked about 10 minutes into the show when I got to interview Nick Mangold, so it's all been downhill since. No, this is everything that Radio Row is about. It's about coming out here, meeting people from media, the world of sports, specifically football, because that's what the Super Bowl is, the NFL. And then just be able to talk sports. Like, this is exactly what it's all about. This is what I've envisioned. This is what I've always wanted to do. I thought even just aside from the amazing guests today, and shout out to all of them. I mean, Nick Mangold, Leigh Steinberg, Doug Freeman, Marcus, the tackle from the Marcus Williams. Thank you. Marcus McNeill. Marcus Williams. Excuse me.
Good thing I was muted.
Marcus McNeill. Excuse me. I apologize, Marcus. He was a great guest. Left tackle for the Chargers. So many more. I'm Greg Cosell. Just great day, and I've had an amazing time. Just thrilled to be here.
2 more days to go. We can do it all the next 48 hours as well. Can't wait.
Last thing that I want to say is that, when we're trying to book people or try and get interviews, the former NFL players, the NFL expertise, that pops out. That's someone that, makes sense to have on. But to me, I had so much fun talking to Marcus Capone and Julianna Peña, 2 people that do not play football. So you know, it's so nice getting to be able to sit down with people and talk to them face to face, you know, hear what they're all about. And, you know, you just don't get that without being here. So, you know, guys, I had a blast today. Wouldn't want to do it with anyone else, and looking forward to do it for 2 more days. So that's it.
Guys, appreciate it. We will, of course, be back tomorrow, right back here at the Los Angeles Convention Center in the week leading up to the Super Bowl. Cincinnati Bengals and Los Angeles Rams meeting up on Sunday. That should just about do it for us for one-on-one. Special thanks to former Jets center Nick Mangold, Doug Freeman, the co-founder of the Arena Football Association, Marcus McNeill, former Chargers Pro Bowl left tackle, Leigh Steinberg, the NFL agent, Marcus Capone of SEAL Team 6, Greg Cosell of NFL Films, and Julianna Peña, the UFC Women's Bantamweight champion. If you missed any of today's segments, interviews, or special features, all the content from today's show will be available on demand on the WFUV Sports YouTube channel. The sports director of WFUV is Bobby Chaffardini. The producer has been all of us. We're all just hanging out.
Not me. I didn't produce
trying our best to keep ourselves on the air. For Mike Messina, Jack Roche, Mike Leegan, I'm Nick DeLuca. Thanks for hanging out with us one-on-one, a production of WFUV Sports. Have a good one, everybody.